Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the animal god, sage, the guardian of the legendary beasts Naruto X Leaf Pokémon. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Dimensional Convergence. Dawn broke over Konohagakure with a strange iridescence, casting prismatic shadows across the Hokage monument. Uzumaki Naruto stood atop the stone visage of his father. Azure eyes narrowed as he observed the peculiar atmospheric disturbance. At 23, he'd grown into his reputation, tall and broad-shouldered, his unruly blonde hair longer now and framing AF. Ace that had lost its boyish roundness but retained something ineffably warm in its expression. The orange and black of his attire had matured to deeper, more subtle tones, though he would never fully abandon his signature color. "It's happening again," he murmured, tracking the shimmer that rippled across the sky like heat waves over desert sand. The phenomenon had first appeared 3 weeks ago. Barely perceptible distortions that most dismissed as unusual weather patterns. But Naruto, attuned to natural energy through his sage abilities, sensed something profoundly wrong in the fabric of reality itself. Kurama stirred within him. "This isn't natural, the fox's voice rumbled in his mind. "It feels like a thinning. Thinning of what? I'm not certain, but it reminds me of something ancient, something from before even my time." That gave Naruto pause. Few things predated the tailed beasts. A familiar presence landed silently beside him. Kakashi, his gravity-defying silver hair now bearing strands of gray, surveyed the anomaly with his visible eye. "The reports are increasing," he said without preamble. 3 more sightings of unidentified creatures in the forests surrounding Mount Myoboku. "The toads are concerned." Naruto nodded, absorbing this information. "Did they send images?" "Better." Kakashi handed him a sealed scroll. "They captured one." The scroll contained a complex stasis seal, masterfully crafted to preserve something alive yet contained. With practiced movements, Naruto unraveled the intricate pattern, channeling a precise amount of chakra to activate the release mechanism. Light flashed, and a small creature materialized before them. It resembled a caterpillar with vivid green coloration, a red antenna protruding from its forehead, and large, surprisingly intelligent eyes that blinked up at them. "What the hell?" Naruto crouched, studying the creature that seemed utterly alien yet radiated a familiar energy. "It's not a summon. I'd sense the contract." The caterpillar-like being trembled but held its ground, examining them with equal curiosity. "Caterpie," it chirped questioningly. "It speaks." Kakashi's visible eyebrow rose. Naruto extended his hand slowly, and to Kakashi's surprise, the creature inched forward, sniffing cautiously before nuzzling against Naruto's fingers. A strange resonance pulsed between them, not unlike the connection he felt with toads at Mount Myoboku, but fundamentally different. "I think it's asking for help," Naruto said, certainty coloring his voice though he couldn't explain how he understood. Kakashi sighed, the sound conveying a world-weary resignation. "Why am I not surprised that you can communicate with interdimensional visitors?" "Interdimensional?" Naruto looked up sharply. "Just a theory." Kakashi shrugged. "But these disturbances, these creatures, they don't belong to our world. The research division has been tracking energy fluctuations that suggest holes in reality itself." Naruto gently lifted the caterpillar creature, which curled comfortably in his palm. "Then we need to investigate the source. The strongest disturbances are around Mount Myoboku, right? The very place where you perfected sage mode." Kakashi's eye curved in what Naruto knew was a hidden smile. "Coincidence? With my luck, never. Leaf pressed her back against the massive tree trunk, breathing heavily as she assessed her situation. The vibrant forest around her bore superficial similarities to Viridian Forest, but everything felt wrong. The quality of light, the strange birdsong. Even the gravity itself seemed slightly off, making her movements feel sluggish and uncoordinated. "Not in Kanto anymore," she muttered, adjusting her white hat more securely over her long brown hair. At 22, Leaf had built a reputation as one of the most methodical and analytical trainers in the Pokémon research community. Where others relied on intuition or brute force, she approached battles and research with the same meticulous precision. That methodical nature was keeping her alive now. When the strange energy readings had appeared near Cerulean Cave, Professor Oak had asked her to investigate. Just readings, he'd said. No sample collection, no risks. Yet here she was, dragged through what could only be described as a tear in reality itself, watching as that tear sealed behind her. Her hand instinctively went to her belt, counting the familiar spheres attached there. 6 Pokeballs, all present. At least she wasn't alone. Her fingers hovered over Venusaur's ball, her starter and strongest team member, but hesitated. Conservation of resources remained paramount until she understood this environment. A rustling in the underbrush made her freeze. Something was approaching. Multiple somethings, moving with deliberate stealth. Not Pokémon, whose movements she could identify from years of fieldwork. These moved with predatory purpose. Leaf palmed a Pokeball, expanding it with practiced efficiency. Jolteon, she whispered, releasing the electric type with minimal light and sound. The spiky yellow Pokémon materialized, immediately sensing her tension and dropping into a defensive crouch, no command needed. Her companion's ears twitched, orienting toward a specific direction. A heartbeat later, metal flashed through the air, strange. Knife-like weapons aimed with deadly precision at her position. Discharge, Leaf commanded. Jolteon's body crackled with electricity, releasing a controlled burst that intercepted the projectiles mid-flight. The weapons clattered to the ground, some embedded in tree trunks from the force of their throw. Silence descended, heavy with anticipation. Impressive reflexes, a male voice commented from the canopy above. But electricity against metal, risky choice. Leaf didn't look up, keeping her eyes on her surroundings. Works well enough against flying types. Figured it might apply here. A soft thud announced someone landing several meters away. From her peripheral vision, she caught the impression of dark clothing and a metallic headband reflecting sunlight. "You're not from around here," the voice continued. Curiosity replacing caution. "Those creatures, they're like the others appearing near the disturbances." "My creature has a name," Leaf replied evenly. "And Jolteon I'd drop you before you blink if I gave the command." A different voice, younger, open, entered the conversation. "But you won't, because you're lost and need information more than you need to start a fight." This voice drew Leaf's full attention. The speaker stepped into view, and she found herself facing a young man with bright blonde hair, whisker-like marks on his cheeks, and the most intensely blue eyes she'd ever seen. He wore strange orange and black clothing and moved with a confident ease that spoke of physical capability. More striking was how he approached without apparent fear of Jolteon, whose electricity was still visibly crackling between its pointed fur. "You're right," she admitted, straightening from her defensive posture though keeping alert. "I'm not from here. My name is Leaf, Pokémon researcher from Pallet Town, Kanto region. And based on the fact that you didn't recognize a Jolteon on sight, I'm guessing I'm very far from home." The blonde man's expression shifted to a wide, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Welcome to the land of fire. The journey back to Konoha involved more leaping through trees than Leaf had anticipated. After a tense introduction and brief exchange of information, she'd recalled Jolteon and released Venusaur, much to the amazement of her escorts. The massive plant Pokémon had immediately NSED her anxiety and remained vigilantly protective, extending a vine to help her navigate the unfamiliar forest terrain. "Your creatures, Pokémon, you called them. They respond to you without verbal commands," Kakashi observed as they traveled. The silver-haired man moved with efficient grace, apparently unbothered by the eye patch and mask that covered most of his face. "We've been together for years," Leaf explained, steadying herself on Venusaur's vine as they crossed a particularly wide gap between trees. "They understand my intentions sometimes before I voice them." Naruto, who had been carrying the small caterpie they'd found earlier, looked back with undisguised fascination. "It's like a partnership, not ownership." "Exactly." Leaf felt a spark of appreciation for his understanding. "We work together, grow together. Some trainers forget that, but the strongest bonds come from mutual respect." Naruto nodded, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared values despite their vastly different worlds. The forest suddenly opened to reveal a sprawling village nestled in a valley, dominated by an imposing mountain face carved with giant visages. Leaf halted, momentarily overwhelmed by the sight. "Welcome to Konohagakure," Naruto said, a note of pride in his voice. "The village hidden in the leaves." "Hidden?" Leaf raised an eyebrow. "That mountain doesn't exactly scream subtle." Kakashi made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "The name is traditional. Once upon a time, ninja villages were actually hidden." "Ninja?" Leaf's eyes widened. "You're ninja?" Naruto grinned, blue eyes sparkling with mischief. "What? Don't I look stealthy?" In his bright orange and black attire, he looked anything but. Leaf found herself smiling despite the gravity of her situation. About as stealthy as a Charizard in a library. Naruto's laugh was unexpectedly warm. "I like you, Leaf. You speak your mind." Their arrival in the village proper brought a wave of sensory information. Smells of street food and incense, sounds of commerce and conversation, the visual tapestry of a culture utterly foreign yet thrumming with familiar human vitality. People nod respectfully to Naruto and Kakashi as they passed, many eyeing Leaf and especially Venusaur with undisguised curiosity or wariness. "They're afraid," Leaf noted quietly. "They're cautious," Naruto corrected. "These disturbances have everyone on edge. Strange creatures appearing, unusual weather, chakra fluctuations that make no sense." "Chakra?" Leaf questioned. Naruto exchanged glances with Kakashi, who nodded slightly. "It's our energy system. What powers our techniques?" To demonstrate, Naruto held out his palm, and Leaf watched in astonishment as swirling energy materialized, condensing into a perfect sphere that rotated with incredible speed and power. "That's," she breathed, scientific mind racing. "That's not unlike Pokémon energy. Different manifestation, similar principles." "Really?" Naruto dispersed the technique, looking intrigued. "Can you show me?" Leaf hesitated, then nodded to Venusaur. "Energy ball." The plant Pokémon opened its mouth, gathering glowing gray energy that coalesced into a sphere similar in size to Naruto's technique, though composed of what appeared to be condensed natural energy. Naruto's eyes widened. "That feels like sage energy." "Sage?" Leaf asked. "Natural energy. The power that exists in the world itself, that only certain practitioners can harness." Naruto's expression grew thoughtful. "The resonance, that's why I could understand what this little one was feeling." He indicated the Caterpie still perched contentedly on his shoulder. Their conversation halted as they reached a large, circular building with the kanji for fire emblazoned on its facade. "Hokage Tower," Kakashi explained. "Our administrative center. There are people you need to meet." The debriefing lasted hours, with various officials questioning Leaf about her world, her Pokémon, and the circumstances of her arrival. She answered with careful precision, providing enough information to establish trust while maintaining professional bow-and-arrows, a skill honed through years of navigating the competitive world of Pokémon research. Throughout the process, she noted how others deferred to Naruto despite his relative youth and casual demeanor. There was respect there, bordering on reverence from some of the younger ninja. When he spoke, people listened, and several times his interventions steered questioning away from topics that clearly made her uncomfortable. As the formal meeting concluded, Naruto approached as she was examining a map of the elemental nations spread across a large table. "Geographical similarities," she murmured, tracing coastlines. "The continental shapes have parallels to my world, but different development patterns." "Your analytical mind doesn't rest, does it?" Naruto observed, leaning against the table. Leaf straightened, tucking a strand of brown hair behind her ear. "Occupational habit, especially when stranded in a parallel dimension." "We'll find a way to get you home," he said with such simple conviction that she almost believed him. "But first, we need to understand why these dimensional breaches are occurring in the first place." A young woman entered the room, carrying a stack of scrolls. She had pink hair cut in a practical bob and intelligent green eyes that assessed Leaf quickly before addressing Naruto. "The analysis from Mount Myoboku arrived," she said, placing the scrolls on the table. "Fukasaku-sama requests your presence immediately. He says it concerns an old prophecy." Naruto sighed dramatically. "Why is it always prophecies with those toads? Just once, I'd like them to call me over for dinner without some world-altering revelation for dessert." The pink-haired woman rolled her eyes with the familiarity of long friendship. Your life would be boring and you know it. She turned to Leaf, extending a hand. I'm Haruno Sakura, by the way. Chief Medical Officer and unfortunate childhood friend of this troublemaker. Leaf shook her hand, noting the calluses and strength belying Sakura's delicate appearance. Leaf, Pokémon researcher and current dimensional refugee. Sakura is also the strongest kunoichi in the village, Naruto added proudly. Once saw her punch through a mountain. Literally. Sakura's cheeks colored slightly. It was a small mountain. It was impressive as what it was, Naruto insisted, then returned his attention to Leaf. Would you like to come to Mount Myoboku? If these disturbances are connected to your arrival, you might provide valuable insights. Leaf considered the offer. Scientific curiosity warred with Kadio. And about traveling to an unknown location with people she'd just met. And yet, there was something about Naruto that inspired trust. Not blind faith, but a reasoned confidence in his intentions. Will there be more of those transport techniques? She asked, recalling the disorienting body flicker Kakashi had used to bypass village security. Naruto grinned sympathetically. Not a fan of shinobi transportation. I prefer my molecules where I put them, thanks. Fair enough. We'll take the scenic route. He turned to Sakura. Tell the toads we'll arrive by nightfall. Sakura nodded, then fixed him with a serious look. Be careful. These disturbances are affecting even the barrier seals around the village. Whatever's happening is gaining momentum. Mount Myoboku existed in a diamond's ion adjacent to the primary world, a fact that made Leaf's head hurt considering she was already in what appeared to be an alternate dimension to her own. Naruto explained the concept of summon realms as they traveled, describing the ancient contract between ninjas and animal clans that allowed for transportation between these connected spaces. So these toads, they're intelligent beings with their own society, culture, and abilities. Leaf clarified as they hiked up the mountain path. The journey had taken most of the day, passing through forests growing increasingly strange and primordial. Exactly. They're among the oldest summon clans, keepers of knowledge from before the founding of the hidden villages. Naruto helped her over a particularly treacherous section of path. They also make terrible food but excellent teachers. Quote, the mountain air shimmered with natural energy so potent that Leaf could almost see it. Her Pokémon sensed it too. Venusaur walked with heightened alertness, while Jolteon, whom she'd released to stretch its legs, occasionally sparked with excess energy absorbed from the atmosphere. This place, she breathed, taking in the massive fungi that served as buildings. The otherworldly vegetation that pulsed with life. The energy concentration is incredible. It's like the Ilex forest and Cerulean cave combined. Naruto watched her with interest. You can sense the natural energy. Not like you seem to, she clarified. But years of working with Pokémon attunes you to environmental energies. They affect behavior, evolution, abilities. She gestured to Jolteon, whose fur stood more erect than usual. Electric types especially are sensitive to energy fields. They crested a rise, bringing into view a massive pool surrounded by stone structures covered in ancient inscriptions. Several toads of varying sizes waited there, including one elderly toad couple barely reaching Naruto's knee. Naruto boy, the male toad called, his voice surprisingly deep for his size. About time, and you've brought the visitor. Naruto bowed respectfully. Fukasaku-sama, this is Leaf. She's a researcher from the world connected to our dimensional disturbances. The ancient toad hopped forward, studying Leaf with golden eyes that reflected centuries of wisdom. Interesting. Very interesting. The energy signature matches the prophecy scrolls. Leaf blinked. I have an energy signature. Everything does, child, the female toad beside Fukasaku said kindly. Yours simply happens to resonate at a frequency our seers haven't encountered in over 1,000 years. Pa, what's going on? Naruto asked, his casual form of address revealing his closeness with the elder toads. Sakura said something about a prophecy. Fukasaku nodded gravely. Come, there is much to explain. They followed the toads to an ancient temple partially embedded in the mountainside. Inside, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi, stretched a massive mural depicting a complex cosmology. At its center stood a human figure surrounded by both massive, tailed beasts and strange creatures that Leaf immediately recognized as Pokémon. Legendary ones including Entei, Suicune, and Raikou prominently featured. The Sage of Six Paths is well known in your history, Fukasaku began. But there were other sages throughout time, specialized in different aspects of the natural world. One of these was the animal god sage, a unifier of beasts and keeper of balance between realms. Leaf stepped closer to the mural, examining the detailed renderings of Pokémon. These are perfect representations, she murmured. Whoever created this had seen them directly. Because our worlds were not always separate, the female elder toad explained. Long ago, what you call Pokémon and what we know as summon animals shared a common realm. The separation occurred during a great cataclysm that nearly destroyed both realities. Naruto studied the central figure in the mural, a human with distinctive markings around their eyes similar to his own sage mode. And this animal sage, they maintained the connection between worlds. Not just maintained, they were the living bridge, Fukasaku said. Their chakra resonated with both realms, allowing them to communicate with and channel the powers of creatures from either world. Leaf turned to Naruto, suddenly understanding. That's why you could communicate with Caterpie. And why my Pokémon responded to you without hesitation. You have this same resonance. Fukasaku nodded. The prophecy speaks of worlds drifting dangerously close ring the time of great mending, after terrible conflict. It says, when the spiral meets the leaf, the animal god will awaken to prevent collision and establish harmony. Naruto and Leaf exchanged startled looks. Spiral, Naruto said, pointing to the spiral symbol on his jacket, the emblem of the Uzumaki clan. Leaf, she responded, touching her namesake. That's oddly specific for an ancient prophecy, Naruto commented. Scratching his head, prophecies often seem vague until the moment of fulfillment, Fukasaku replied. Then they become almost painfully literal. The female elder toad approached a stone pedestal where an ancient scroll lay open. The dimensional disturbances are growing stronger because the natural barriers between worlds are failing. Something, or someone, is accelerating the process. Deliberately, Leaf asked, alarmed. We believe so. The pattern of disturbances suggests manipulation rather than natural deterioration. Naruto crossed his arms, his expression hardening with resolve. Then we need to find who's responsible and stop them before both our worlds suffer. A thunderous boom interrupted their conversation, the very air reverberating with impact. Outside, the sky above Mount Myoboku fractured with prismatic light, jagged lines spreading like cracks in glass across the firmament. What the? Naruto began, rushing outside with the others close behind. The peaceful mountain landscape had transformed into chaos. Rifts in space tore open across the terrain, disgorging strange creatures, not the peaceful Pokémon Leaf recognized, but distorted. Aggressive versions that attacked anything in sight. Those aren't normal Pokémon, she shouted over the din, already reaching for her team. Something's wrong with them, they're corrupted somehow. A massive creature resembling a twisted Tyranitar roared, its armored body pulsing with sickly purple energy as it charged toward a group of young toads. Naruto moved without hesitation, hands flashing through complex signs before slamming his palm to the ground. A massive wall of earth erupted, intercepting the creature's charge. Get the young ones to safety, he commanded the adult toads, authority ringing in his voice. Gone was the casual, friendly demeanor, replaced by the bearing of a seasoned commander. Leaf released her full team, Venusaur, Jolteon, Blastoise, Ninetales, Dragonite, and Espeon, positioning them strategically. Defensive formation, she called. Venusaur, Blastoise, perimeter control. Ninetales, fire coverage for the north quadrant. Jolteon, speed response to breakout threats. Dragonite, aerial support. Espeon, psychic detection of emerging rifts. Her Pokémon moved with practiced coordination, implementing her strategy without hesitation. Naruto glanced her way, clear appreciation in his eyes before he turned back to the battle. What followed was a masterclass in combat from both of them. Naruto moved like living lightning, his techniques devastating precisely controlled to minimize collateral damage. He created solid clones of himself, actual duplicates, not illusions, that fought with independent intelligence while coordinating seamlessly with his main body. Leaf demonstrated why she was considered one of the most tactical trainers in Kanto, directing her team with efficient commands that maximized their effectiveness against the corrupted Pokémon. She analyzed weaknesses instantly, adapted to changing battlefield conditions, and coordinated with Naruto's forces without prior planning. Behind you, Naruto shouted as a rift opened directly behind Leaf. Before she could fully turn, a corrupted scyther lunged from the dimensional tear, blades aimed at her back. Naruto appeared in a yellow flash, a swirling energy sphere in his hand that collided with the creature, sending it hurtling back through the rift which sealed immediately after. "Thanks," Leaf gasped, genuinely impressed by his speed. "No problem." He grinned despite the battle raging around them. "Though your Espeon was already moving to intercept." Indeed, the psychic Pokémon had positioned herself to defend her trainer, eyes glowing with building power. Leaf nodded appreciatively at her loyal companion. The battle continued for nearly an hour, with rifts opening and closing unpredictably. Throughout the chaos, Leaf noticed something remarkable about Naruto. Oh, he fought with incredible power but showed constant restraint and compassion, even for the corrupted Pokémon attacking them. He contained rather than killed when possible, protected the vulnerable without hesitation, and seemed to have inexhaustible stamina. Finally, the rifts began to stabilize, their frequency diminishing until the mountain fell silent again save for the sounds of recovery efforts. Leaf recalled most of her team, leaving only Venusaur out to help with healing the injured. She approached Naruto, who stood at the edge of a crater formed during the battle, his expression troubled as he surveyed the damage. "That wasn't a natural event," she said, stopping beside him. "No," he agreed. "It was a test. Someone wanted to see our defenses, our response capabilities. You were incredible out there," she offered sincerely. "I've never seen fighting like that." He turned, his usual smile returning though tempered with seriousness. "Your tactical command was amazing. The way you positioned your team, adapted to each new threat. There are Jonin commanders who couldn't coordinate that effectively." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched Toads and Naruto's clones working together to restore order to the mountain. "I think the prophecy might be right," Leaf said finally. "During the battle, I noticed how the corrupted Pokémon reacted to you, differently than to others. Even in their distorted state, they recognized something in you." Naruto nodded slowly. "I felt it too. A connection, like with the Toads but deeper somehow." He looked at his hand, flexing it thoughtfully. "When I channeled Sage Chakra near them, the corruption seemed to recede temporarily." "The animal god Sage," Leaf murmured. "The guardian of beasts and bridge between worlds. Just what I needed, another destiny." Despite his words, there was no bitterness in his tone, only wry acceptance. Fukasaku hopped toward them, looking weary but determined. "The Council of Elders has reached a decision. Naruto boy, you must undertake the trials to awaken your animal sage abilities fully. The attack today was only the beginning." "Trials?" Naruto questioned. "At the sacred pool, beginning at dawn." The elder Toad's gaze shifted to Leaf. "Your presence is also required. The prophecy speaks of both Spiral and Leaf." As night fell over Mount Myoboku, Leaf sat alone by a small pool, reflecting on the extraordinary events that had brought her to this place. Her scientific mind catalogued observations, seeking patterns and explanations, while another part of her grappled with the implications of prophecies and destined roles. Naruto approached quietly, offering a steaming cup. "Thought you might want some tea. Fair warning, Toad brewing techniques are unique." She accepted the cup with a grateful smile, inhaling the strange but not unpleasant aroma. "Is it always like this around you? Prophecies, battles, world-altering revelations?" He laughed softly, settling beside her. "More often than I'd like. Though interdimensional visitors are a new one, even for me." "Lucky you," she replied dryly, taking a cautious sip of the tea. "Lucky me," he agreed, his tone held no sarcasm as he gazed at the stars overhead, stars that, Leaf realized with a pang, were arranged in constellations utterly foreign to her. Sensing her sudden melancholy, Naruto spoke gently. "We'll find a way to get you home. I promise." His blue eyes met hers with unwavering certainty. "And I never go back on my word. That's my ninja way." Something about his simple declaratio carried more weight than elaborate assurances might have. Leaf found herself nodding, a measure of tension easing from her shoulders. "In the meantime," he continued, "we need to figure out who's manipulating these rifts and why they're targeting places with strong natural energy. Collecting power, perhaps." Leaf suggested. In my world, there have been organizations that sought to harness Pokémon energy for various purposes, some benign, others, less so. Naruto's expression darkened momentarily. We've had similar experiences with groups seeking to capture and exploit the tailed beasts, powerful entities that, he paused. Eyes widening. Wait, could there be a connection between tailed beasts and legendary Pokémon? Leaf leaned forward, scientific interest piqued. Tell me about these entities. Their conversation continued late into the night, exchanging knowledge about their respective worlds, finding surprising parallels and significant divergences. Throughout their discussion, Leaf found herself increasingly impressed by Naruto's quick understanding and insightful questions. Despite his occasional informal speech and relaxed demeanor, his mind was razor-sharp, connecting concepts with intuitive leaps that sometimes left even her analytical thinking scrambling to follow. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them, and they retired to prepare for the trials ahead. Leaf settled into the strange but comfortable accommodations provided by the toads, her mind still processing the day's events. She was drifting towards sleep when a soft glow illuminated her room. Opening her eyes, she gasped at the sight of 3 translucent forms materializing near her bed, massive, leonine creatures she instantly recognized as Entei, Suicune, and Raikou, the legendary beasts of Johto. Impossible, she whispered, sitting up slowly. You can't be here. The spectral forms regarded her silently, their presence neither threatening nor comforting, simply expectant. Then, as one, they turned toward the wall in the direction where Leaf knew Naruto was sleeping. Understanding dawned. You're looking for him. The new sage, Suicune, the embodiment of northern winds, inclined its crystalline crest in what might have been acknowledgement before the apparitions faded from view. Leaf sat motionless in the darkness, heart racing. Whatever forces had brought her to this world, whatever prophecy was unfolding, it was far greater than dimensional accidents or coincidental naming. The legendary beasts themselves were responding, reaching across worlds to find their new guardian. The animal god sage was awakening, and somehow, her fate was intertwined with his. Dawn found Naruto standing waist-deep in the sacred pool at the heart of Mount Myoboku. Ancient stone pillars encircled the water, inscribed with symbols representing the fundamental forces of nature. Leaf and the elder toads watched from the shore as Naruto closed his eyes, his posture relaxed yet alert. The trial begins with stillness. Fukasaku explained quietly. He must attune his chakra to the specific frequency that resonates with animal spirits across dimensions. Leaf nodded, observing intently. Her scientific curiosity had temporarily overcome her concern about returning home. The phenomenon unfolding before her was unprecedented, a unique opportunity to witness the connection between chakra and Pokémon energy. Hours passed with Naruto motionless in meditation. Occasionally, ripples would emanate from his position, spreading across the pool in geometric patterns rather than natural circles. The water itself began to glow with subtle bioluminescence, responding to his energy. Something's happening, Leaf murmured, noticing a change in the atmosphere. The air grew heavy with potential, like the moment before lightning strikes. Naruto's eyes snapped open, no longer blue but golden with horizontal bar pupils similar to the toad's, yet with a distinctive difference that Leaf couldn't immediately identify. He's entered sage mode, Fukasaku confirmed. Now comes the challenging part. He must reach beyond our dimensional boundary. As if on cue, Naruto raised his hands, forming an unfamiliar seal. The water around him began to swirl, climbing his body in spiraling patterns that defied gravity. His chakra became visible even to Leaf's untrained eyes, a golden aura that pulsated with tremendous power. Is this normal? She asked, concerned by the intensity of the energy manifestation. There is no normal for what he attempts, the female elder toad answered. No one has successfully awakened as an animal sage in over a millennium. The air split open above the pool, not the jagged, destructive rifts from the previous day's attack, but a smooth oval aperture revealing a starfield unlike anything in either of their worlds. From this portal descended spectral forms that Leaf instantly recognized. The legendary beasts, she breathed, watching as Entei, Suicune, and Raikou materialized above Naruto, circling him in a triangular formation. The beasts began to roar in harmonious chorus, their voices creating vibrations that resonated with the stone pillars surrounding the pool. Naruto remained centered and calm despite the overwhelming presence of the legendary creatures, his golden eyes tracking their movements with recognition rather than fear. Suddenly, all three beasts plunged into the water simultaneously, their forms dissolving into pure energy that flowed toward Naruto like liquid light. The moment they made contact, a blinding flash erupted, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When vision returned, Naruto stood at the pool's center, transformed. Intricate markings resembling both toad sage patterns and stylized representations of the three beasts adorned his skin like living tattoos. His hair had lengthened slightly, wild and untamed, while his whisker markings had deepened and extended. Most striking were his eyes, still sage gold, but now with slitted pupils rimmed by a ring of blue that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. Naruto, Leaf called hesitantly, uncertain if the transformation had affected his consciousness. He turned toward her voice, and relief washed through her at the familiar smile that crossed his face, powerful and changed, yet unmistakably himself. I saw them, he said, his voice resonating with harmonic undertones. Not just the beasts, all of them. An entire world of creatures, connected through a web of energy that spans dimensions. He walked toward the shore, the water parting before him rather than impeding his progress. As he emerged from the pool, the markings on his skin pulsed once then faded to subtle lines visible only in direct light. The animal sage awakens, Fukasaku declared solemnly. But this is merely the beginning. Naruto nodded, understanding the implications. They showed me glimpses. Someone is harvesting energy from both worlds, capturing creatures and extracting their essence. The dimensional boundaries are weakening because they're being deliberately damaged. Who would have both the knowledge and capability to manipulate dimensional barriers? Leaf asked, mind racing through possibilities. I couldn't see their identity clearly, Naruto admitted. But I sensed familiar chakra, someone connected to the Otsutsuki clan. The elder toads exchanged alarmed glances. If the Otsutsuki are involved, the situation is far graver than we feared, Fukasaku said. Their understanding of dimensional travel and chakra manipulation exceeds even our most ancient records. Leaf looked between them, recognizing the severity of their reactions. These Otsutsuki, they're dangerous. They're not of this world originally, Naruto explained, the new harmonics in his voice lending weight to his words. They harvest chakra from planets, consuming entire civilizations for power. We thought we'd dealt with their threat during the Fourth Great Ninja War, but if they've discovered Pokémon energy as a new source of power, Leaf continued, following his reasoning, they could be attempting to breach the dimensional barriers permanently to access both energy sources simultaneously. Naruto's expression hardened with determination. Which means we need to locate the weakest points in the dimensional barrier and reinforce them while tracking down whoever's behind this. A distant explosion shattered the moment, followed by alarm calls from toads stationed at the mountain's perimeter. Naruto's head snapped toward the disturbance, his enhanced senses immediately detecting the nature of the threat. They're here, he stated, already moving toward the sound. A coordinated attack, multiple rifts opening simultaneously. Leaf ran alongside him, Rel, easing her Pokémon with practiced efficiency. They're targeting you specifically now that you've awakened your sage powers. Naruto nodded grimly, using corrupted Pokémon as frontline attackers while concealing their true presence. He formed a familiar cross-shaped hand seal. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Dozens of perfect duplicates materialized around them, spreading out to defend the mountain. Lee F. marveled at the technique. Not illusions but solid copies, each capable of independent action while maintaining a hive mind connection to the original. They crested a ridge to find chaos unfolding across the mountain plateau. Rifts larger than before disgorged not only corrupted Pokémon but humanoid figures in strange armor wielding technological weapons unlike anything in either of their worlds. Those aren't ninja, Naruto observed, analyzing the enemy's movements. Their fighting style is completely different. And those aren't pure Pokémon either, Leaf added, noting the cybernetic enhancements on the corrupted creatures. They've been modified with technology. A squad of the armored figures noticed them, immediately adjusting their formation to target Naruto specifically. Their weapons charged with crackling energy that distorted the air around them. Stay behind me, Naruto instructed, stepping forward as the weapons discharged simultaneously. Instead of dodging, he extended his hand, and the energy beams seemed to hit an invisible barrier, dispersing harmlessly. With his other hand, he formed a familiar spiraling sphere, but unlike the Rasengan he'd demonstrated earlier. This one contained swirling elemental chakra that resembled a miniature storm. Sage Art. Beast Harmonization Sphere, he called, the technique seemingly named instinctively through his new connection to the animal sage powers. He thrust the sphere forward, and it expanded explosively, engulfing the attacking squad in elemental fury that somehow discriminated between enemies and allies, leaving the toads in the area completely unharmed while neutralizing the armored attackers with precision. Leaf coordinated her Pokémon with remarkable tactical efficiency, creating defensive formations that complemented Naruto's offensive capabilities. Her Espeon and Jolteon formed the vanguard, using their speed and ranged attacks to disable enemies before they could coordinate, while Venusaur and Blastoise provided area control and defensive coverage. Through it all, Leaf noticed that Naruto fought differently than before, his movements more fluid, his techniques infused with new properties. Hat seemed specifically effective against the corrupted Pokémon. When he approached these creatures, the corruption visibly receded from his presence alone, as though his very chakra purified the tainted energy possessing them. The battle reached its climax when a massive rift opened at the center of the plateau, and a figure emerged unlike any other. It resembled a human in broad strokes, but its skin was pale white. Its eyes featureless except for concentric rings, and horn-like protrusions extended from its head. It wore elaborate robes decorated with unfamiliar symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Otsutsuki, Naruto confirmed, his expression grave. But something's different. Its chakra signature is corrupted, mixed with something else. The entity raised its hand, and every rift on the battlefield suddenly expanded, the dimensional barriers straining visibly as reality itself warped around them. We need to close those rifts before the mountain's dimensional pocket collapses entirely. Fukasaku called from nearby. Naruto nodded, his eyes shifting fully into his new sage mode as he accessed deeper levels of his awakened power. Leaf, I need your help. The Pokémon energy, it's part of the dimensional frequency. Your connection to your Pokémon might help stabilize the barriers. Understanding immediately, Leaf placed her hands on Venusaur and Espeon, the two Pokémon most attuned to natural energy. What do you need me to do? Channel your connection through me, he said, placing his hand over hers. Think of it like a combined attack in your world, but with pure energy rather than combat techniques. As their hands touched, an immediate resonance formed between them, their energies recognizing each other at some fundamental level that transcended their different worlds. Naruto's chakra, now infused with animal sage properties, harmonized perfectly with the Pokémon energy flowing through Leaf's connection to her team. Together, EY generated a wave of purifying energy that spread outward in concentric circles, closing the rifts one by one and forcing the Otsutsuki entity to retreat. As the dimensional tiers sealed, the corrupted Pokémon began to revert to their natural states, the malevolent influence receding from them. The entity fixed its unsettling gaze on Naruto before disappearing into the final rift. The animal god awakens, but too late. The convergence comes regardless, Uzumaki Naruto. Your world and hers will become our harvest field. With those ominous words, it vanished, the rift sealing behind it. Ents fell across the battlefield as combatants on both sides processed what had occurred. The formerly corrupted Pokémon looked around in confusion, no longer hostile but clearly disoriented. They were being controlled, Leaf realized. Approaching a small group of Oddish that huddled together fearfully. Forced through the rifts and corrupted to serve as weapons. Naruto knelt beside a fallen armored soldier. Examining the technology. This is neither from your world nor mine, he observed. Something new, or perhaps something very old. Fukasaku hopped toward them, his expression grave despite their apparent victory. The entity spoke of convergence, an ancient term from our most forbidden scrolls. It refers to the complete merging of dimensional planes. Complete merging, Leaf repeated, horrified. That would cause catastrophic disruption to both ecosystems, both civilizations. Exactly why it was forbidden knowledge, the Elder Toad confirmed. The cataclysm that original L.Y. separated our worlds was the result of a failed convergence attempt millennia ago. Naruto stood, his transformed appearance gradually reverting to normal as he released the depths of his sage power. Though something had permanently changed in his aura, a new resonance that hummed with potential. Then we need to prevent history from repeating, he stated with quiet determination. Starting with understanding exactly what we're facing. He turned to Leaf, blue eyes intense with purpose. Your knowledge of Pokémon and their energy systems will be crucial. Will you work with me on this? I know your priority is returning home. But my priority is preventing catastrophe to both our worlds, she interrupted firmly. I'm a researcher first. I go where knowledge is needed most. Relief and appreciation flashed across Naruto's features. Then we begin immediately. We need to map the dimensional weak points, understand the corruption mechanism they're using on Pokémon, and identify the technology behind these weapons. As they made plans, Leaf found herself studying Naruto with growing respect. In the space of a day, he had absorbed complex interdimensional concepts, adapted to encountering an entirely new form of life. Awakened latent mystical abilities, and formulated coherent strategies against an unknown enemy, all while maintaining his center and inspiring confidence in those around him. The prophecy had named him the Animal God Sage, but Leaf was beginning to suspect that title barely scratched the surface of what Uzumaki Naruto truly was. That night, as Mount Myoboku recovered from the attack, Naruto stood alone at the sacred pool, gazing into its depths where star-like lights now swirled in patterns matching distant constellations from both their worlds. He-sen, said Leaf's approach before hearing her footsteps, another new ability from his awakened sage powers. Couldn't sleep, he asked without turning. Too many questions, she admitted, stopping beside him. In the pool's ethereal light, her features were softened, revealing a vulnerability she kept carefully guarded during daylight hours. Every time I close my eyes, I see those corrupted Pokémon, Soof. Faring under whatever was controlling them. Naruto nodded in understanding. I felt their pain during the battle. Their life force, what you call Pokémon energy and what resembles natural chakra here, was being twisted. Forced into patterns it was never meant to take. Can they recover? I believe so. The corruption receded once they were freed from control. He glanced at her. Your Pokémon are remarkably resilient. Their bond with you gives them additional protection. Leaf smiled faintly, appreciating his perception. They've been through a lot together. Even before interdimensional travel was added to our resume. Comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the cosmic dance reflected in the pool's surface. I had another vision, Naruto said finally. After everyone was asleep, clearer this time, Leaf turned to him, instantly alert. What did you see? Locations, where the dimensional barriers are weakest. 7 points across the elemental nations, corresponding to 7 points in your world. His brow furrowed in concentration. The land of Wind Desert, near Suna. The northern mountains in the land of lightning. The ancient forests in the land of fire. He volcanic islands south of water country. The underground caverns in earth country. The celestial temple in the land of iron. And, he hesitated, and, Leaf prompted, the Valley of the End. Ere the final battle of the Fourth Great Ninja War took place. Where the dimensional fabric was first damaged by chakra of unprecedented power. Leaf absorbed this information, her analytical mind already mapping potential strategies. If these are focal points, we need to establish monitoring at each location, perhaps find ways to reinforce the barriers. Naruto nodded. I've already sent shadow clones to alert the 5 cage. We'll need coordinated effort across all the hidden villages. And we need to find a way to communicate with my world, Leaf added. If there are corresponding weak points there, someone needs to protect them as well. The legendary beasts might help with that, Naruto suggested. They exist in both dimensions simultaneously, or at least can traverse between them more easily than we can. You've thought this through quite thoroughly for someone who just had a vision tonight, Leaf observed, impressed. A slight smile crossed his features. I've had some experience with world-threatening crises. Develops the planning muscles. She laughed softly, the sound unexpectedly pleasant in the solemn night. I suppose it would. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, recognition of kindred spirits despite their different origins. Both carried responsibilities greater than themselves, both approached those burdens with determination rather than resentment. And both possessed the rare ability to find moments of lightness even in darkness. "We should try to rest," Naruto said eventually. "Tomorrow we head back to Konoha to coordinate our response." Leaf nodded, turning to leave before pausing. "The legendary beasts visited me last night," she confessed. "Before they appeared to you at the pool, they seemed to be searching for something. For me," Naruto confirmed without surprise. "And for you as well, I suspect. The prophecy mentions both Spiral and Leaf. Our roles are connected." "I'm a scientist, not a prophesied savior," she stated firmly. "I deal in observable phenomena and testable hypotheses. And yet here you are, in another dimension, helping a ninja with mystical sage powers prevent cosmic catastrophe," he pointed out with gentle humor. "Sometimes the observable phenomena get pretty strange." She couldn't argue with that logic. "Good night, Naruto." "Good night, Leaf." As she walked away, Naruto earned his gaze to the pool where 3 distinct constellations now shone brighter than the others, patterns resembling Entei, Suicune, and Raiko watching over both worlds from the cosmos itself. "I understand now," he whispered to the silent stars. "Why it has to be both of us." The water rippled in response, and for just a moment, Naruto saw reflections of other guardians who had stood at this same pool throughout history, animal sages who had maintained the delicate balance between worlds. Their faces blurred except for their eyes, which matched the transformed state he had briefly achieved during the awakening ritual. The last face to appear was his own, but not as he currently existed, older, with deeper wisdom etched in his features, and beside him stood a figure whose identity Ned shrouded yet felt intimately familiar. The vision faded, leaving Naruto alone with the weight of destiny and the growing certainty that whatever lay ahead would transform not just himself, but the very fabric of both their worlds. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Keeper of Beasts. Desert winds carved invisible patterns across endless dunes, their whispers a language only the most seasoned travelers understood. The relentless sun transformed the landscape into a sea of gold, mirages dancing at the horizon where heat met sky. Through this beautiful desolation moved 4 figures, silhouettes against the harsh brightness. Their footprints disappearing almost as quickly as they were made. Temari squinted against the glare, adjusting the massive fan strapped to her back as she led the group. At 26, the Kunoichi had grown into her role as Sunagaku's chief diplomatic liaison with quiet confidence. Her blonde hair, still styled in 4 distinct ponytails, caught the desert light like burnished metal. "We're approaching the restricted zone," she announced, voice carrying across the wind to her companions. "The excavation site is just beyond that ridge." Naruto nodded, his enhanced senses already detecting the chakra signatures of the archaeological team ahead. 3 days had passed since the events at Mount Myoboku, and the awakening of his animal sage abilities continued to manifest in unexpected ways. Colors appeared more vibrant, sounds carried deeper harmonics, and energy patterns that had once been invisible now shimmered at the edges of his perception. "Your brother wasn't exaggerating about these ruins," he observed, studying the distant rock formations that seemed randomly scattered yet contained subtle patterns his eyes now recognized. "They're older than the hidden villages. Maybe older than the Sage of 6 Paths himself." Leaf wiped sweat from her brow, unused to the desert's punishing climate. Her Venusaur trudged steadily beside her, occasionally eyeing a fine mist from its flower to provide momentary relief from the heat. "The geologic stratification is fascinating," she remarked, scientists' mind engaged despite physical discomfort. "These formations wouldn't exist naturally in the Pokémon world, our continents formed differently." The 4th member of their party, a pale young man with ink-black hair, made a quick gesture with his brush. A small bird formed from living ink materialized, circling once before soaring toward the excavation site. "Perimeter secure, but there's unusual activity at the northeastern quadrant," Sai reported. His expression characteristically neutral though his eyes remained alert. Not hostile. More like confused movement patterns. Temari frowned. The archaeological team wouldn't deviate from assigned sectors without authorization. "It's not human," Naruto stated with sudden certainty, his pupils briefly shifting to their animal sage form, horizontal bars surrounded by blue rings. "Something's emerged from the ruins. Something powerful." As if confirming his words, a distant roar echoed across the desert, deep and resonant like rolling thunder despite the cloudless sky. The sound triggered immediate recognition in Leaf. Entei, she breathed, eyes widening. But that's impossible. How would a legendary beast be here? The dimensional barriers continue to weaken, Naruto reminded her, already adjusting their course toward the disturbance. After what we saw at Mount Myoboku, nothing seems impossible anymore. Tamari took the lead, gesturing for the others to follow her more direct route. The ruins extend underground for kilometers. If something emerged from the deeper chambers, the archaeological team could be in danger. She moved with effortless grace across the difficult terrain, displaying the desert-born expertise that allowed Suna Shinobi to traverse landscapes that would exhaust or disorient outsiders. Naruto matched her pace easily, while Sai created ink birds to carry himself and Leaf over the steepest dunes. You've changed, Tamari observed during a brief pause to get their bearings. Her teal eyes studied Naruto with analytical precision. It's not Zhu. The sage markings are the new chakra signature. There's something fundamentally different about your presence now. Naruto considered her words, appreciating her directness. Tamari had never been on for unnecessary conversation or empty flattery, a quality he'd always respected. I feel different, he admitted. Like I've been seeing the world through frosted glass all my life, and suddenly everything's clear. Not just clearer, connected. I can sense how energy flows between all living things, how it creates patterns and resonances. Dangerous knowledge, she commented without judgment. Knowledge is neutral, Leaf interjected, joining their conversation. Its application determines danger. Temari's gaze shifted to the Pokémon researcher, reassessing her. When they'd first met in Konoha, she'd been skeptical of this outsider with her strange creatures and talk of parallel worlds. But Leaf had proven both her intellectual capability and practical usefulness during their journey through the land of rivers and into Wind Country territory. Fair point, Tamari acknowledged with the barest hint of a smile. Though in my experience, knowledge powerful enough to alter one's mental perception rarely remains neutral for long. Another roar interrupted their exchange, closer now and carrying undertones that vibrated through the sand beneath their feet. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, connecting to the natural energy around them. It's not just Entei, he said, eyes snapping open. There are humans approaching it, with harmful intent. We need to hurry. Without further discussion, they crested the final ridge, revealing a sprawling excavation site nestled within a natural basin. Ancient stone structures protruded from the sand like the bones of a buried giant. They are surfaces covered in weathered inscriptions. Scaffolding and equipment marked the areas where the archaeological team had been working, but the site appeared deserted. Except for one section, where flashes of fire illuminated a confrontation in progress. There, Tamari pointed toward the northeastern corner, where a massive, lion-like creature with a starred crest and billowing mane fought against a dozen black-clad figures. Those aren't archaeologists. Bandits, Sai confirmed, his ink birds providing aerial reconnaissance. Well equipped, they're trying to capture rather than kill. Leaf released her Dragonite with practiced efficiency. Entei is a legendary beast of fire. If they're trying to capture it, she didn't need to complete the thought. The implications were clear to everyone after their discoveries at Mount Myoboku. Sai, locate the archaeological team, Naruto instructed. Tamari, can you create an exit corridor if we need to evacuate? The Suna Kunoichi nodded sharply, already unfurling her massive fan. 3 moons are full moon. Full moon, he responded without hesitation, trusting her judgment on wind jutsu strength needed. Leaf looked between them, quickly catching on to their tactical shorthand. Dragonite and I will provide aerial support. If we can get Entei's attention, it might recognize me as a trainer from its world. Be careful, Naruto cautioned. Legendary Pokémon might react differently in this dimension, especially if they feel threatened. With coordinated precision that spoke of years of battlefield experience, they moved into action. Tamari took position on an elevated stone platform, her fan fully extended to reveal 3 purple circles, the 3 moons, that signified her medium-range techniques. With a practiced swing, she generated powerful wind currents that disrupted the bandits' formation, scattering their coordinated attack against Entei. The legendary beast roared in response, its fiery mane blazing bright. As it seized the opportunity to reposition. Naruto noted its tactical awareness. This was no mindless animal but an intelligent being assessing its situation. Leaf circled above on Dragonite, calling down to the fire deity. Entei, we're allies. We met with Suicune at Mount Myoboku. The great beast paused, its crimson eyes tracking upward to locate her voice. Recognition flickered in its gaze, not of Leaf personally, but of something she represented. Its attention then shifted to Naruto, nostrils flaring as it caught his scent. It recognizes the animal's sage energy, Naruto realized aloud. Just like the toad said, these creatures know the signature of their guardian. One of the bandits, more heavily armored than the others, barked orders in a language Naruto didn't recognize. The Gr. produced strange mechanical devices that emitted pulsing energy fields directed at Entei. Those are capture devices, Leaf shouted, instantly recognizing the technology despite its modified form. Similar to what Team Rocket developed in my world, but more advanced. Naruto didn't waste time questioning. His hands formed seals with practiced fluidity, and 4 shadow clones materialized, moving with independent purpose while maintaining tactical coherence with his main body. 2 engaged the bandits directly, disrupting their formation with precisely targeted Rasengan spheres that targeted equipment rather than bodies. Another clone moved to secure the perimeter, while the 4th began gathering nature energy to supplement Naruto's reserves. Meanwhile, Temari demonstrated he was considered one of Suna's elite Jonin. With calculated sweeps of her fan, she manipulated air currents to create both offensive pressure that staggered opponents and defensive barriers that deflected projectiles. When 3 bandits attempted to flank her position, she revealed the true versatility of her weapon. Wind style. Severing gust. She called, swinging her fan in a tight arc that released near invisible blades of compressed air. The technique didn't aim to kill, instead, it sliced through equipment straps, weapon harnesses, and the mechanical devices with surgical precision, effectively disarming her opponents without serious injury. In the same motion, she leapt from her position, her fan now partially collapsed to serve as a blunt instrument that she wielded with devastating effectiveness in close combat. Impressive, Leaf commented from above, directing her Dragonite to target the bandits, escape routes with controlled flamethrower attacks that created barriers of fire without endangering the ancient structures. Sai returned from his reconnaissance, ink beasts dissolving as he landed beside Naruto. Archaeological team secure. They retreated to the underground chambers when the attack began. 23 personnel, no casualties. Good. Naruto focused on the battle's evolving dynamics. The bandits were retreating from Entei but regrouping rather than fleeing, suggesting secondary objectives or reinforcements. His instincts proved correct when the earth trembled, sand cascading from the higher dunes as massive mechanical constructs emerged from concealed positions. These walking weapons platforms, each standing 3 meters tall, surrounded the excavation site with cannons charged with the same energy as the handheld devices. Advanced tech, Temari noted, regrouping with the others. Not Wind Country design, nor any hidden village I recognize. Because it's not from this world, Leaf confirmed grimly. Those are modified versions of Captu. Mechanisms used in Pokémon tournaments, weaponized and scaled up. Entei growled, flames intensifying around its form as it backed toward Naruto and his group, clearly identifying them as the less threat compared to the mechanical constructs. It's choosing to trust us, Naruto observed. Or at least, to trust the animal's sage energy it senses. The lead bandit, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, activated a communication device. His words carried clearly through the desert air, initiate Protocol Omega. The beast isn't priority, target the sage. The mechanical constructs pivoted simultaneously. Weapons systems recalibrating to focus on Naruto. They know who you are, Temari warned, stepping partially in front of him with her fan ready, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. They know what I am, Naruto corrected. Which means whoever's behind this understands the prophecy and sees me as the primary threat to their plans. Energy beams lanced from the mechanical platforms, converging on their position with devastating potential. Naruto's response was immediate and fluid. Golden chakra flared around his body as he entered a partial-tailed beast mode, combined with his new animal sage abilities. The resulting energy manifestation formed a translucent barrier that absorbed the incoming attacks. Tamari. Sai, wide perimeter control. Leaf. Evacuation support for the archaeological team. I'll handle these platforms. His allies moved without question, recognizing the tone that had led armies during the Fourth Great Ninja War. Even Leaf, new to their world, responded to the natural authority in his voice. What followed demonstrated why Naruto was considered the strongest shinobi of his generation. He moved between the mechanical constructs with blinding speed, his sage-enhanced perception identifying weaknesses in their design that would be invisible to normal eyes. Rather than overwhelming force, he applied precisely calibrated Rasengan variants that targeted power sources and control mechanisms. 3 platforms collapsed in less than a minute, their energy systems disabled rather than destroyed, preserving them for later analysis. The remaining constructs adjusted their tactics, deploying countermeasures that included energy shields and gravity manipulation. Naruto adapted instantly. When conventional approaches failed, he shifted to natural energy techniques that bypassed technological defenses. Sage Art. Frog Strike, he called, his palm connecting with a construct's shield. Instead of force, the technique transmitted natural energy directly into the mechanical system, disrupting its electronic components from within. Throughout the battle, Entei watched with evident interest. When a platform targeted Tamari as she protected evacuating archaeologists, the legendary beast intervened, unleashing a flamethrower of such intense heat that it melted the construct's weapons array instantly. The coordinated defense forced the bandits to retreat, their leader visibly frustrated as he activated some form of teleportation device that extracted his remaining forces and disabled platforms. As quickly as it had erupted, the battle concluded, leaving the archaeological site secured but significantly damaged. Smoke rose from several structures, and impact craters marked where energy beams had struck ancient stone. Tamari surveyed the aftermath with a critical eye. They'll be back with better intelligence and more resources. This was a probing attack. Agreed, Sai said, already documenting the enemy technology through detailed sketches. Their primary objective appeared to be assessment rather than success. Naruto approached Entei cautiously, maintaining eye contact with the magnificent creature. Up close, its PR essence was even more imposing. Heat radiated from its body in palpable waves, and each breath released sparks that danced momentarily before extinguishing. "Thank you," he said simply, instinctively reaching for the natural connection his new powers facilitated. Entei studied him silently, intelligence evident in its crimson gaze. Then, with deliberate movement, it lowered its massive head until its forehead nearly touched Naruto's. Vision exploded behind Naruto's eyes, images of ancient battles, of 3 beasts running across landscapes that existed before humans walked the earth, of a temple deep beneath the desert sands where knowledge lay sealed for millennia. Most significantly, he saw a crystalline object pulsing with energy at the temple's heart, connected somehow to the stability of dimensional boundaries. When the vision faded, Entei had stepped back, its message delivered. Naruto blinked, reorienting himself to the present as Leaf approached cautiously. "What happened?" she asked, noting his distant expression. "You both just froze for almost a minute." "It showed me something," Naruto explained, voice hushed with wonder. "A temple beneath these ruins, predating everything we know. And something inside, a crystal that affects the dimensional barriers." Entei growled softly, turning its gaze toward a partially excavated structure at the site's center. "That's the main access point the archaeological team uncovered," Tamari confirmed, joining them. "They've only explored the upper chambers so far." Leaf studied Entei with professional interest, maintaining a respectful distance. "In my world, Entei is said to be born from volcanic eruptions, embodying the purifying aspects of fire. Along with Suicune and Raikou, it's one of the 3 legendary beasts said to serve under Ho-Oh, the rainbow Pokémon. It wants us to follow," Naruto stated with certainty. "To see what's below." Tamari signaled to Suna Shinobi who had emerged to secure the site. "I'll coordinate the archaeological team. Whatever you found in that vision, it clearly matters to our interdimensional problem." Her efficiency impressed Leaf, who had initially misjudged the Kunoichi as merely a combat specialist. Throughout their journey, Tamari had demonstrated strategic thinking, diplomatic skill, and administrative competence that spoke of significant leadership experience. "We'll need light sources and climbing equipment," Sai pointed out, ever practical. Entei huffed, sparks cascading from its jaws in what almost resembled amusement, before turning toward the central structure. The message was clear: no equipment would be necessary with the legendary beast as their guide. The descent into the earth revealed architectural wonders that defied historical understanding. What began as roughly hewn stairs transitioned to perfectly formed passageways with walls bearing intricate inscriptions that seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. These symbols, Leaf murmured, documenting everything with her Pokédex's camera function. Some resemble ancient unknown script from the ruins of Alph, but others are completely unfamiliar. Entei led them confidently, its flaming mane providing illumination that cast long shadows against the ancient walls. Naruto walked beside the beast, occasionally touching inscriptions that resonated with the animal's sage energy flowing through him. I can partially understand these, he revealed, surprising even himself. Not the language exactly, but the intent behind them. They're recordings of some kind, preserving knowledge about the connection between worlds. Tamari maintained vigilant awareness as they progressed deeper, her fan ready as she continuously assessed their surroundings. How far down does this go? Her question was answered as they rounded a final corner, emerging onto a balcony overlooking a vast underground chamber that defied belief. The space stretched at least a kilometer in diameter, its ceiling supported by massive columns carved to resemble various animals and Pokémon intertwined in harmony. At the chamber's center stood a temple complex constructed from a material that gleamed with inner light despite its obvious antiquity. The architecture blended elements from both worlds, torii gates reminiscent of Fire Country shrines alongside structures that Leaf recognized from ruins in Sinnoh. Incredible, she breathed, professional detachment momentarily overwhelmed by wonder. Entei led them down a spiraling ramp toward the temple complex. As they descended, Naruto felt increasing resonance with the natural energy permeating the chamber. His sage senses detected currents flowing through the very stone, creating patterns that resembled a massive seal array. This entire chamber is one enormous stabilization mechanism, he realized aloud. It's reinforcing the dimensional boundary from this side. Which means there must be corresponding structures in my world, Leaf concluded. Mind racing through possibilities. Probably in locations sacred to legendary Pokémon. A Critique City's burned tower where the legendary beasts originated, perhaps. They reached the temple entrance, where massive doors stood partially open. The material wasn't stone as it had appeared from a distance, but a crystalline substance with swirling patterns visible within its translucent depth. Entei stopped, turning its massive head toward Naruto expectantly. I think I need to open it fully, he interpreted, approaching the doors. As his hands touched the crystalline surface, the swirling patterns intensified. Responding to his chakra, instinctively, he channeled natural energy into his palms, creating the specific resonance he developed during his animal sage awakening. The doors responded, swinging inward with surprising lightness despite their massive size. Beyond lay a circular chamber whose walls were covered entirely in murals depicting a cohesive narrative. It's a history, Tamari observed, studying the images with sharp attention to detail. Look, it shows both worlds initially connected. The murals depicted humans and Pokémon living together in harmony, with summon animals and other creatures equally integrated into society. Central figures wearing ceremonial robes appeared repeatedly, identifiable as animal sages by the distinctive markings around their eyes that matched Naruto's transformed state. As the narrative progressed around the circular chamber, it showed conflict arising, figures with pale skin and horned protrusions that clearly represented the Otsutsuki clan. The murals depicted them harvesting energy from both humans and Pokémon, growing in power while the worlds weakened. The original separation wasn't an accident, Naruto realized, following the story. It was deliberate, a protective measure. The final panels showed three animal sages working together with the legendary beasts to create a controlled dimensional divide, separating the worlds to protect them from Otsutsuki predation. The cost was clearly immense. Two of the sages were depicted sacrificing their lives to establish the barrier, while the third remained as guardian of the boundary. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal bearing a crystal identical to the one from Naruto's vision, roughly the size of a fist, multifaceted and pulsing with inner light that shifted between blues and greens. Entei approached the crystal, looking from it to Naruto with clear intent. I think it wants you to take it, Leaf suggested, maintaining a respectful distance from the artifact. It's a stabilization anchor, Naruto said with sudden understanding. One of 7, corresponding to the 7 locations I saw in my vision. Together, they maintain the controlled separation between dimensions. Quote, Tamari frowned thoughtfully. But if separation was the original protection against these Otsutsuki, why would someone be trying to merge the worlds now? Perhaps they believe they can control the combined energy of both worlds, Sai suggested, his artistic eye capturing details of the murals in rapid sketches. Or perhaps the Otsutsuki themselves have turned and seek to eliminate the barrier that foiled their previous harvest. Naruto approached the crystal cautiously, his enhanced senses detecting its complex energy pattern. Whatever the reason, we need to protect these anchors. If they're destroyed or corrupted, the dimensional barriers could collapse completely. As his fingers touched the crystal, it responded immediately, glowing brighter and resonating with his chakra. The sensation wasn't unpleasant, but immensely powerful, like touching a contained lightning storm. Suddenly, the chamber trembled, dust cascading from the ceiling. As a distant explosion echoed through the complex. We've got company, Tamari announced, already moving toward the entrance. They followed us down. Sai dispatched ink beasts for reconnaissance. Air liquid forms slithering rapidly up the ramp toward the disturbance. Multiple signatures, similar to the attack force above but more numerous. They want the crystal, Naruto concluded, closing his hand around the artifact. Rather than resisting removal, it seemed to bond with his chakra, its light pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Entei growled, moving protectively in front of their GR. Oop, as the sounds of conflict grew closer. We need an alternative exit, Leaf stated, analyzing their tactical situation. Preferably one the attackers don't know about. There, Tamari pointed to a seemingly solid wall behind the pedestal. The air currents are different, there's space beyond it. Naruto approached the wall, crystal still clutched in his hand. As he neared, symbols appeared on the surface, responding to the artifact's proximity. Without conscious decision, he pressed the crystal into a depression that perfectly matched its dimensions. The wall shimmered and became translucent, revealing a passage beyond. Emergency escape route, he explained, though how he knew this remained unclear even to him. The original sages built contingencies. Go, Tamari ordered, fully extending her fan as she took position facing the main entrance. I'll cover your retreat and join you. Leaf hesitated. We shouldn't separate. I'm the best suited for delaying tactics, Tamari interrupted, her tone allowing no argument. This is my territory, my specialty. Go. Naruto recognized the strategic sense in her decision, however reluctantly. 5 minutes. Then we come back for you. A ghost of a smile touched Tamari's lips. I'll only need 3. Entei surprised them by remaining with Tamari, taking position beside her with flames intensifying around its massive form. Beast and the Kunoichi exchanged a glance of mutual respect, two protectors recognizing each other's resolve. Naruto led Leaf and Sai through the revealed passage, which sloped upward through Natura. LLY formed tunnels that appeared to predate even the temple construction. Behind them, they heard the distinctive sound of Tamari's wind scythe technique, followed by surprised shouts and the roar of Entei's fire. She'll be all right, Naruto assured Leaf, noting her concerned expression. Tamari's one of the strongest kunoichi in the allied shinobi forces. Combat in confined spaces with wind manipulation is practically her signature. It's not her capability I doubt, Leaf clarified as they climbed. It's the unknown variables. These aren't ordinary enemies. Their path emerged unexpectedly into daylight, exiting through a small opening half a kilometer from the main excavation site. From this vantage point, they could see that additional forces had indeed arrived, black-clad figures with the same advanced technology as the earlier attackers, plus larger transport vehicles stationed around the perimeter. We need to circle back and find Tamari, Naruto decided, already mapping the most efficient route through his shadow clones positioned as lookouts. Before they could move, however, the ground trembled violently. A massive surge of energy erupted from the excavation site, forming a swirling vortex of wind and fire that scattered enemy forces in all directions. At the vortex's center rose Tamari astride Entei, her fan generating wind currents that the legendary beast's flames transformed into a tornado of fire. Impressive improvisation, Sai commented, genuine admiration coloring his usually neutral tone. The fire tornado cleared a path through the enemy forces, allowing Tamari and Entei to race toward their position with remarkable speed. Behind them, the underground structure began to collapse, ancient stone returning to the desert from which it had been carved. Tamari leapt from Entei's back as they reached the group, landing with practiced grace despite the high-speed dismount. Her clothes showed signs of combat, torn fabric, scorch marks, but she herself appeared energized rather than injured. They brought dimensional manipulation technology, she reported crisply. Attempted to extract the crystal forcibly. When that failed, they tried to collapse the temple with explosives. Did you see who's leading them? Naruto asked. Tamari shook her head. Foot soldiers only, but I overheard communications referring to the director giving orders remotely. Entei growled, its gaze fixed on the crystal now suspended in an energy field around Naruto's wrist. The artifact had apparently created its own containment system rather than requiring physical handling. We need to move, Leaf urged, eyeing the enemy forces regrouping in the distance. They'll have tracking capabilities. Naruto nodded, expanding his sensory range to identify their optimal escape route. East, toward the border with the land of rivers. We can lose them in the canyons. As they prepared to depart, Entei made a decisive sound, then turned and sprinted directly toward the enemy forces. Before anyone could react, the legendary beast unleashed a fire blast of unprecedented magnitude, creating a wall of flames that temporarily blocked pursuit. It's buying us time, Leaf realized. But won't it be captured? I don't think anything catches Entei if it doesn't want to be caught, Naruto replied, watching the majestic creature disappear into the fire it had created. It has its own role to play in what's coming. With enemy forces temporarily blocked and the archaeological site secured by arriving Suna reinforcements, they began their journey eastward. Naruto created shadow clones to lay false trails while Sai's ink birds provided aerial reconnaissance to avoid patrols. Nightfall found them camped in a small ravine near the river country border, the stark desert landscape transitioning to rocky terrain cut through with seasonal waterways. Tamari had selected their position with tactical precision, defendable approaches, multiple escape routes, and natural features that disrupted tracking techniques. Leaf tended to her Pokémon, treating minor injuries sustained during their escape. Venusaur seemed particularly fatigued by the desert climate. Its normally vibrant flowers slightly wilted despite regular hydration. Your creatures are remarkably resilient, Tamari observed, joining Leaf after completing her perimeter check. Especially Kansi. Daring how different our world must be from yours. They adapt, Leaf replied, applying a healing spray to Venusaur's leaf. That's what Pokémon do, adapt, evolve, grow stronger through challenges. Like Shinobi, Tamari noted. Though we lack the dramatic physical transformations. Leaf smiled slightly. I wouldn't call your wind techniques non-dramatic. A companionable silence fell as they worked together to establish the camp. Despite their different origins, both women shared a practical efficiency that made collaboration natural. Naruto sat apart from the group, cross-legged on a flat rock outcropping with the crystal hovering before him in its self-generated containment field. His eyes were closed in deep meditation as he attempted to understand the artifact's purpose and power. The crystal responded to his focused attention, its inner light pulsating in patterns that seemed almost communicative. As he channeled small amounts of natural energy toward it, images formed in his mind, not as clear as Entei's direct vision sharing, but significant nonetheless. He saw 6 other crystals identical to this one, each in locations corresponding to his previous vision. Together, they formed a network that maintained what the ancient sages had called the gentle divide, a controlled separation that allowed both worlds to develop independently while preserving their fundamental connection. More concerningly, he sensed that 2 of these crystals had already been compromised, not destroyed but corrupted, their stabilizing influence perverted to actually weaken the dimensional barriers rather than reinforce them. 5 remain, he murmured, opening his eyes to find Tamari watching him from nearby. You look troubled, she observed, settling beside him with characteristic directness. Naruto explained his discoveries, describing the network of crystals and the corruption already affecting some of them. We're racing against an enemy with a significant head start, he concluded. Then we adapt our strategy, Tamari replied pragmatically. Split our forces, protect the remaining crystals while investigating who's behind this. He studied her in the moonlight, appreciating her tactical mind and unflinching approach to challenges. Where others might see insurmountable odds, Tamari saw variables to be accounted for and overcome. You handled Entei remarkably well, he commented. Most people would be intimidated by a legendary Pokémon. Tamari's lips quirked in a rare smile. I grew up with Gaara, remember? A fire lion seems straightforward by comparison. The reference to her younger brother, once a feared Jinchuriki, now the respected Kazekage, highlighted their shared history. Though they'd been on opposite sides during their first Chunin exams, they since fought together through war and peace, developing mutual respect that transcended their village's occasional political tensions. Fair point, Naruto chuckled. Though I noticed something interesting. Entei chose to stay with you during the battle rather than following us. That's significant coming from a legendary. Perhaps it recognized a kindred spirit, she suggested. We both understand the nature of fire and wind. How they strengthen each other. The crystal pulsed brighter momentarily, as if responding to her words. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as he sensed a resonance between Tamari's chakra and the artifact. The crystal reacts to you, he noted with interest. Your wind nature chakra has a frequency that harmonizes with its energy. Tamari studied the floating crystal with newfound curiosity. What does that mean, practically speaking? I'm not entirely sure, Naruto admitted. But the original sages worked in teams, different elemental affinities complementing each other to maintain balance. Your wind chakra might be particularly effective for certain aspects of stabilization. Before she could respond, Sai approached silently from the perimeter. Movement 3 kilometers south, he reported, not pursuing us directly, appears to be establishing a search grid. They're methodical, Tamari observed, immediately switching to tactical assessment. No, T-standard bandits or even normal shinobi. Military precision. Naruto rose fluidly, the crystal automatically attaching itself to his wrist again. We should move before their grid reaches this position. As they prepared to break camp, a distant howl echoed across the landscape, hauntingly beautiful and carrying undertones that seemed to manipulate the very air through which it traveled. Leaf froze, recognition immediate. Suicune, she whispered. The north wind, embodiment of purifying water. Another legendary beast, Naruto confirmed, his sage senses already detecting the powerful entity approaching from the northeast. But why now, and what connection does it have to Entei's appearance? In my world, the legendary beasts always move in concert, though rarely seen together, Leaf explained. They serve different functions but toward a common purpose. Like the stabilization crystals, Tamari suggested. Different elements, unified goal. The howl came again, closer now and clearly directed at their group. Without discussion, they altered their departure route toward the sound, drawn by both tactical necessity and deeper resonances none could fully articulate. They traveled through the night, avoiding enemy search patterns while moving steadily northeast. The terrain became increasingly rugged, dotted with small oases where underground springs created unexpected havens of life amid the harsh landscape. Near dawn, they crested a ridge overlooking a sheltered valley where a pristine pool reflected the fading stars. Beside it stood Suicune, majestic and otherworldly with its crystalline crest catching the first light of approaching day. Unlike Entei's burning presence, Suicune emanated serene power, each movement deliberate, each breath purifying the air around it. The legendary beast watched their approach with ancient eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. It's even more beautiful than the legends describe, Leaf murmured, prophase. Seonal detachment momentarily abandoned in genuine wonder. Naruto approached slowly, the crystal at his wrist pulsing in rhythmic harmony with Suicune's crystalline structures. The beast observed him with evident recognition, then turned its gaze to his companions, lingering particularly on Tamari with apparent interest. It recognizes your wind affinity, Naruto realized. Suicune is associated with the north wind in Leaf's world. The legendary beast approached Tamari directly, stopping just beyond arm's reach. For a tense moment, the kunoichi stood perfectly still, meeting its gaze with fear or aggression, respect between equals. Then, with deliberate grace, Suicune lowered its head and touched its crest to Temari's fan. The effect was immediate and startling, the purple circles on her weapon illuminated with new energy. The metal itself taking on subtle crystalline properties along its edges. Temari gasped softly, feeling the transformation extend beyond the physical implement to her chakra itself. "What's happening?" she asked, maintaining remarkable composure despite the unprecedented experience. "A blessing," Leaf answered, witnessing something she'd only read about in ancient texts. "Suicune is attuning your weapon and chakra to its elemental aspect, purifying wind that cleanses corruption." Suicune stepped back, its purpose apparently accomplished. It then turned to Naruto, who instinctively held out his hand with the crystal. The beast studied the artifact before touching its nose gently to the containment field. Vision flooded Naruto's consciousness, clearer than with Entei, carrying precise information rather than impressions. He saw enemies converging on another crystal location in the Land of Lightning, a massive operation already underway to extract and corrupt the stabilization anchor there. More disturbingly, he glimpsed the consequences of failure, catastrophic dimensional collapse that would destroy both worlds rather than simply merging them. As the vision faded, Naruto found himself kneeling, supported by Temari's steady hand on his shoulder. "What did you see?" she asked, concern evident beneath her controlled exterior. "Our next destination," he answered grimly. "And what happens if we fail?" Suicune made a sound like distant thunder, then turned its attention to Leaf. The Pokémon researcher stood very still as the legendary beast approached her directly. "I don't understand," she admitted quietly. "I'm not a sage or a kunoichi, I'm just a researcher who happened to cross dimensions." The beast's response was to touch its crest gently to her forehead. Unlike the others, Leaf received no vision. Instead, a profound sense of recognition and purpose flowed through her. In that moment, she understood her role was not accidental but essential, her knowledge of Pokémon and their world providing context that no one in this dimension could offer. Suicune stepped back, then raised its head toward the brightening sky. How! L of impossible beauty echoed across the landscape, carrying power that physically manifested as a shimmering aurora above them despite the daylight. A signal, Naruto realized. It's communicating with the other beasts. As if confirming his words, two answering calls echoed from distant points, one they recognized as Entei's roar, the other unfamiliar but clearly completing the triad. "Raikou," Leaf identified, the Thunder Beast. All three are active now, responding to the dimensional threats. Suicune lowered its head once more in acknowledgement, then turned and bounded away with impossible grace. Each step barely touching the ground as it vanished toward the horizon. In its wake, the pool's water had transformed, now glowing with subtle energy that Naruto immediately recognized as similar to Mount Myoboku's sacred oils. "Sage enhancement," he explained to the others. Suicune purified this water to amplify natural energy attunement. Understanding the implicit invitation, he approached the pool and submerged his hands. The effect was immediate. His connection to natural energy sharpened dramatically, his animal sage abilities strengthening and stabilizing in ways that would normally require hours of meditation. When he emerged from brief submersion, the temporary markings of his transformation had gained definition and permanence, subtle lines extending from his eyes that shimmered with inner light when he channeled chakra. "The legendary beasts are accelerating your development," Leaf observed with academic interest despite their dire circumstances. "They recon. The threat level requires immediate rather than gradual awakening." Temari tested her enhanced fan with a controlled sweep, producing wind currents that visibly purified the air through which they passed. "Not just Naruto," she noted. "They're preparing all of us in different ways." Naruto rose from the pool, his senses expanded beyond previous limitations. He could now perceive energy patterns kilometers distant, including the search parties still systematically combing the desert. "We need to leave immediately," he decided. "Our destination is the Land of Lightning, specifically the No. Rthern peaks where the second crystal is housed." "That's Kumogakure territory," Temari pointed out. "My diplomatic credentials will help, but we should send word ahead to avoid complications with their border security." Sai produced a scroll and brush, quickly creating a messenger bird infused with enough chakra to reach Konoha. "Kakashi-sama can coordinate with the Raikage. Where should reinforcements meet us?" Naruto considered the strategic implications, balancing speed against security. The Valley of Eyes, where lightning and hot water countries meet. We'll need specialized support, particularly lightning users who can help stabilize the crystal there. As they finalized their plans, Naruto noticed Leaf standing slightly apart, her expression thoughtful as she gazed in the direction Suicune had departed. "You're concerned," he observed, joining her. "Confused might be more accurate," she admitted. "I understand your role as the prophesied sage, and even Temari's affinity with wind matching Suicune's aspect. But my purpose here still seems coincidental rather than destined." Naruto considered her words carefully. "Maybe it's both. In my experience, destiny rarely follows clean lines, it's messy, contradictory, full of seemingly random elements that eventually reveal their purpose." "Very philosophical for someone who once dreamed of becoming Hokage simply to be acknowledged," Temari commented. Approaching with their prepared travel packs, Naruto grinned, momentarily resembling his younger, more carefree self. "I've had some time to think between world-saving adventures." Leaf accepted her pack, adjusting it comfortably across her shoulders. "Well, destined or coincidental, I'm committed to preventing dimensional collapse. My world has faced its share of cosmic threats, legendary Pokémon going rogue, teams seeking ancient powers, even alternate dimensions threatening to overwhelm ours. But nothing on this scale. That's what teammates are for," Naruto replied simply. "No one faces these challenges alone." As they departed the valley, following the direction Suicune had indicated, Temari fell into step beside Naruto. The events at the pool had shifted something between them, a resonance established through their shared interaction with the legendary beast. "You're different than I remembered," she observed after they had traveled some distance in comfortable silence. Still recognizably Naruto, but deeper somehow. He considered this assessment. "I grew up," he offered with a slight shrug. "We all did. War changes people. Sometimes breaks them, sometimes strengthens them. And sometimes reveals them," Temari suggested. "The essence was always there, just waiting for circumstances to bring it forward." Their eyes met briefly, understanding passing between them that required no further words. Whatever challenges lay ahead in the land of lightning, they would face them together, not as representatives of their respective villages, but as individuals uniquely suited to confront a threat beyond political boundaries. The crystal at Naruto's wrist pulsed gently, as if affirming this unspoken alliance. Within its facets, images shifted like distant reflections, other crystals responding across dimensions, a network activating after centuries of dormancy. The animal sage had awakened, and now the legendary beasts had acknowledged him. The next phase of their journey would test not just his new abilities, but the growing bonds between companions drawn together by forces older than nations, older than the hidden villages, perhaps older than humanity itself. 3 days later, they stood at the border between the lands of frost and lightning, gazing up at the imposing mountain range that marked Kumogakure territory. Clouds shrouded the highest peaks, occasionally illuminated from within by natural lightning that gave the mountains their name. Their journey had been remarkably unhindered, enemy forces seemingly sent from their path despite the intensive search in the desert. This fact concerned rather than reassured Naruto, suggesting their adversaries had shifted focus elsewhere, possibly to the crystal site they now approached. "Kumo patrols ahead," Sai reported as his reconnaissance birds returned. "Standard formation, not enhanced security. Either they haven't received our message, or they're deliberately maintaining normal appearances," Temari analyzed, adjusting her fan's position to ensure the new crystalline edges remained concealed. Their existence would raise questions they currently had no time to answer. Leaf studied the mountains with professional interest, her Pokédex occasionally emitting soft beeps as it recorded atmospheric data. "The electrical patterns here are fascinating. Natural phenomena but with unusual consistency. In my world, this would be prime habitat for electric-type Pokémon." According to the sage murals, there's a reason for that similarity, Naruto reminded her. "Our worlds were once connected, with creatures moving freely between them." Their conversation paused as a Kumo patrol appeared on the path ahead, 4 shinobi in standard lightning country attire. Led by a familiar figure whose pale blonde hair was visible even at a distance. Samui, Temari identified with evident surprise. Special Jonin, an advisor to the Reikage. Her presence suggests they did receive our message. The Kumo Kunoichi approached with measured steps, her expression characteristically composed. At 28, Samui had maintained her reputation for cool efficacy. NCY while rising through Kumogakure's ranks to become one of the Reikage's most trusted operatives. Uzumaki Naruto, she greeted with a slight nod. The Hokage's message arrived yesterday. Reikage S. Ama has granted you passage to the northern peaks, with appropriate escort. Her gaze shifted to the others, lingering briefly on Leaf with evident curiosity before acknowledging Temari with professional courtesy. Sunagakure's liaison is unexpected but welcome. The Cage sent separate confirmation of your mission status. The situation involves all 5 great nations, Temari explained diplomatically. The dimensional disturbances affect our shared borders and security interests. Samui nodded once, accepting this explanation without further questioning. My team will guide you through our territory. The northern sanctuaries are traditionally restricted, but exceptions have been made given the circumstances. As they followed the Kumo shinobi into the mountain passes, Naruto noted subtle changes in the environment, increasing static electricity in the air, plant life that seemed to conduct and store electrical charges, even small animals with unusual bioluminescent properties. The barriers between worlds are particularly thin here, he observed quietly to Leaf. Natural lightning from this region must affect your world as well, creating environments favorable to electric-type Pokémon. Which would explain why Raikou might be associated with this location, she concluded, her scientific mind making connections rapidly. The third legendary beast represents thunder and lightning. Samui, overhearing their exchange, glanced back with carefully controlled interest. These legendary beasts, you mention, they're connected to the electrical disturbances we've been monitoring. Naruto considered how much to reveal, balancing security against the need for Kumogakure's informed cooperation. They're protectors, he explained, responding to threats against the dimensional boundaries. The disturbances you've detected are symptoms of deliberate interference with natural barriers. The Kumo Kunoichi processed this information with professional detachment. The Northern sanctuaries have experienced increased activity over the past month. Lightning strikes 20 times normal frequency, unusual energy readings, and sightings of creatures matching no known classification. Pokémon, Leaf confirmed, crossing through weakened dimensional barriers. Some naturally, others forced. Their path narrowed as they ascended higher into the mountains, requiring NGLE file movement along treacherous ledges. Conversation paused as they focused on navigating the difficult terrain, though Naruto noticed Samui occasionally studying him with analytical attention, noting his changed appearance. The subtle sage markings, and particularly the crystal still suspended at his wrist. By midday, they had reached a plateau nestled between 3 sharp peaks, each crowned with perpetual storm clouds that exchanged lightning in geometric patterns rather than random discharges. The Sanctuary of Resonant Thunder, Samui announced, gesturing toward an ancient structure partially embedded in the mountainside. Our oldest temple, predating Kumogakure itself. The architecture reflected its name, designed to capture and channel lightning strikes through a complex array of metal spires and crystalline receptors. The entire structure hummed with contained energy, vibrating at frequencies that Naruto could both hear and feel through his enhanced senses. It's a receiver, he realized. Studying the temple's design, collecting natural lightning and converting it into stabilization energy for the dimensional barrier. Samui's expression revealed momentary surprise, before returning to its usual composure. How could you know that? The temple's true purpose is restricted knowledge, shared only among Kumo's highest echelons. Because I've seen another like it, Naruto explained, the crystal at his wrist pulsing more rapidly as they approached the sanctuary. Different element, same function. There are 7 such sites across our world, maintaining what ancient records call the gentle divide. Understanding dawned in Samui's eyes. The lightning pilgrimage, she murmured. A ritual our elders perform every 7 years, visiting 7 sacred sites across the elemental nations. Always dismissed as ceremonial tradition, but actually maintaining interdimensional stability, Temari completed. Each hidden village likely preserved some aspect of the original knowledge, fragmented to protect the whole. They approached the sanctuary entrance, where elaborate seals restricted access to those with specific chakra signatures. Samui performed a complex sequence of hand signs, her lightning-natured chakra activating the first layer of security. Only those with Kumobikar bloodlines can proceed further, she explained apologetically. Unless, the crystal at Naruto's wrist flared suddenly, its light extending to illuminate the seals. Where it touched, the ancient patterns reconfigured, recognizing an authority that preceded the hidden village system itself. The sage over-eyed, Samui whispered, genuine awe briefly cracking her professional demeanor. It's not just legend. The sanctuary doors swung open, revealing a circular amber whose walls were inscribed with lightning-patterned seals that continuously circulated energy throughout the structure. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal similar to the one they'd seen Bene. The desert, designed to hold a crystal identical to the one Naruto carried. But the pedestal was empty. We're too late, Leaf realized, immediately scanning the chamber for clues. Someone's already taken it. Naruto closed his eyes, extending his sage senses throughout the sanctuary. Not taken, he corrected grimly. Corrupted and repositioned. I can feel its energy signature, distorted but still present. Samui immediately signaled her team to establish a defensive perimeter. When our sentries report no unauthorized access, they wouldn't, Tamari pointed out, examining the seal arrays with tactical assessment. If they understood the technology well enough to corrupt the crystal, bypassing traditional security would be trivial. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the sanctuary, not threatening but alerting. Lightning flashed outside with increasing frequency, illuminating the chamber in stroboscopic bursts that revealed a massive form materializing near the empty pedestal. Raiko, the beast of thunder, its body crackling with electrical energy that interfaced directly with the sanctuary's systems. Unlike Entei's fiery presence or Suikun's serene power, Raiko emanated barely contained fury, not directed at them, but at whatever had corrupted its domain. Samui and her team instinctively moved into defensive stances, but Naruto raised his hand to halt them. It's not hostile, he assured them. It's responding to the corruption. The legendary beast fixed its gaze on Naruto, electricity arcing between its saber-like fangs. Like its counterparts, it recognized the animal sage immediately. But its manner was more direct, more urgent. Without the gentle communication style of Suikun or the visionary approach of Entei, Raiko simply seized Naruto's consciousness in a thunderbolt of direct information transfer. He saw everything, a team of specialized operatives bypassing Kumo security through dimensional manipulation rather than traditional infiltration. Their leader, a woman with distinctive white hair and technological augmentations integrated into her body. The careful extraction and corruption of the crystal, repurposed to accelerate Han stabilized the dimensional boundaries. Most crucially, he saw their current location, a research facility constructed within the storm clouds themselves, using the mountain's natural lightning to power their corruption process. When the vision released him, Naruto found himself supported by Tamari and Leaf, both looking concerned at the intensity of the communion. They're here, he gasped, orienting himself. Above us, within the storm itself, using Kumo's natural lightning to corrupt the entire network. Samui's expression hardened from cool professionalism to cold determination. That explains the increased storm activity. We've been inadvertently powering their operation. Raiko growled agreement, electricity intensifying around its form as it paced the chamber with barely contained energy. Its attention shifted to Samui, studying her with the same assessment it had given Naruto. It recognizes your lightning affinity, Naruto explained. Just as Suikun responded to Temari's wind nature. Understanding immediately, Samui approached the legendary beast with appropriate respect but without fear. What does it require from me? Conduit, Naruto translated as Raiko communicated through their established connection. Your lightning chakra can help locate the corrupted crystal through resonance. Without hesitation, Samui removed the Tonto blade from her back, a additional Kumo weapon that channeled lightning chakra with exceptional efficiency. She held it horizontally before Raiko in formal offering. The beast touched its nose to the blade, electricity arson. Between them in controlled patterns that infused the metal with new properties. Like Temari's fan, the weapon transformed, maintaining its original form but gaining crystalline aspects that reflected Raiko's elemental essence. I can sense it, Samui confirmed, her eyes widening slightly as new awareness flowed through her connection to the blade. Northwest, approximately 3 kilometers, Seuss, pended within the central lightning nexus of the storm system. Raiko turned to Naruto, its purpose clearly communicated. A hunting pack had formed, with the animal sage at its center. The beast would guide them through the storm, using natural lightning pathways that would bypass conventional defenses. It's offering to take us directly to the facility, Naruto explained to the others. But the journey will be unconventional. Leaf studied Raiko with professional assessment. It's proposing lightning teleportation, using electrical pathways as transportation conduits. Theoretically possible with a Pokémon of Raiko's caliber, but normally only for itself. The animal sage connection makes it possible for others, Naruto confirmed, the knowledge somehow clear to him through their communion. But not without risk. Compared to dimensional collapse, the risk seems acceptable, Tamari observed practically. Samui nodded in agreement. My team will coordinate ground support and alert Kumogakure's defense forces. The 4 of us should accompany Raiko directly. A larger group would complicate the transportation technique. Decision made. They prepared quickly, securing equipment that might be affected by electrical discharge, establishing communication protocols with Samui's team, and positioning themselves as Raiko indicated through Naruto's translation. The beast's body began to transform, its solid form becoming increasingly electrical until it resembled a living thunderbolt more than a physical creature. Naruto, drawing on his newly awakened sage abilities, created an energy field around their group that would protect them during transport. Remember, he cautioned, maintain physical contact with each other and mental focus on our destination. The lightning path connects points instantaneously, but losing concentration could result in materialization at the wrong coordinates. Leaf placed her hand firmly on his shoulder, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding apprehension. Just like teleportation with Alakazam, but with more dramatic special effects. Tamari took position on his other side, her enhanced fan humming with sympathetic resonance to Raiko's energy. Should be cooler than Suna in summer, at least. Samui completed their circle, her transformed Tonto raised to channel the impending electrical surge. Her expression remained composed, but Naruto sensed her controlled excitement at participating in something that would become legendary even by Kumogakure's dramatic standards. Ready? He asked, receiving confirming nods from each. Raiko's form collapsed into pure electrical energy that engulfed their group in brilliant light. For an eternal instant, they existed as pure energy, consciousness maintained through Naru. 2 sage techniques while their physical forms converted to lightning itself. They traveled through natural conduits within the storm, awareness stretched and compressed simultaneously in ways human perception wasn't designed to process. Naruto maintained their cohesion through sheer willpower, his animal sage abilities creating the framework that kept their identities intact during the impossible journey. Reality reasserted itself with shocking abruptness as they materialized on a platform constructed within the storm clouds themselves. Lightning flashed continuously around them, illuminating a structure that defied conventional architecture, part building, part energy collection system, part dimensional manipulation device. Their arrival had bypassed external security completely, Depot, sighting them directly at the facility's heart where the corrupted crystal pulsed with sickly energy at the center of elaborate technological arrays. Raiko reformed beside them, its electrical body solidifying into physical presence once more. The legendary beast growled low, eyes fixed on the corrupted crystal with evident distress. It's worse than we thought, Naruto observed, his enhanced senses detecting the extent of corruption. They've inverted the crystal's function completely. Instead of stabilizing the boundaries, it's actively dissolving them. Before they could formulate a response, alarms blared throughout the facility. Their unconventional arrival had finally triggered security systems designed to detect energy anomalies rather than physical intrusion. So much for the element of surprise. Tamari commented dryly, fully extending her enhanced fan in preparation for combat. Samui adjusted her grip on her transformed Tonto, lightning chakra visibly coursing through the crystalline blade. 4 intruders against an unknown number of enemies, in their territory, surrounded by storms that prevent conventional retreat. Not ideal odds. Leaf released her Jolteon, the electric Pokémon immediately adapting to the high-energy environment with evident enthusiasm. We have advantages they don't expect. Specialized abilities, legendary support, and the animal sage. Naruto stepped forward, the crystal at his wrist resonating with its corrupted counterpart despite their opposing energies. His eyes shifted fully into animal sage mode as he accessed the depths of his newly awakened powers. "We're not here to fight," he stated with quiet authority that carried despite the facility's alarms and the storm's constant thunder. "We're here to restore balance." As security forces converged on their position, Raiko positioned itself protectively before the group, electricity building around its form in preparation for battle. The legendary beast's presence, combined with Naruto's transformed appearance, created a tableau that would be remembered in Kumogakure legend for generations to come. The animal god sage and the thunder beast, standing together against those who would destroy the boundaries between worlds. The confrontation had begun, and its outcome would determine the fate of not just the crystal, but the stability of dimensional barriers that protect both their worlds from catastrophic convergence. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, Council of Legends. Lightning fractured the air around them, not in chaotic bursts but in geometric patterns that formed and dissolved with mathematical precision. The security forces surrounding Naruto's group wore specialized armor that interfaced directly with the facility's electrical systems, their weapons humming with accumulated charge. 15 operatives had responded to the alarm, deploying in a three-tiered formation that demonstrated extensive tactical training. None of them moved to attack immediately. The presence of Raiko, a legendary creature unknown in their world yet radiating palpable power, gave them pause. A woman's voice echoed through the facility's communication system, clinical and detached. "Fascinating. The animal sage manifestation occurred sooner than our models predicted. And it appears you've gained the allegiance of the electrical entity as well." Naruto maintained his calm center despite the tense standoff, scanning the facility with his enhanced senses. "You know who I am, then. The prophesied guardian, the bridge between realms, the keeper of beasts." Amusement colored the disembodied voice. Many titles for what is essentially an evolutionary adaptation to interdimensional stress. Your emergence was inevitable once we began accelerating the convergence. Samui stepped forward, her transformed tanto directed at the nearest security operatives. "You're violating Kumogakure sovereignty. Identify yourself." A soft laugh answered her. "Your concept of national boundaries becomes rather quaint when operating between dimensions, but very well. You may call me Director Kagami. I lead Project Convergence." "Project Convergence is a violation of natural law," Leaf stated, her scientific authority evident despite her foreign origin. "The stabilization crystals exist to prevent catastrophic dimensional collapse, not facilitate it." "Ah, the visitor from the Pokémon world." Interest sharpened in the director's tone. "Your presence here is particularly valuable data. The passive crossover of a non-combatant suggests the barriers are thinning even faster than our instruments indicate." Naruto had been mapping the facility during this exchange, identifying the corrupted crystal's exact location and the technological apparatus surrounding it. The origin, Al crystal, now inverted to emit corruption rather than stability, pulsed with sickly energy at the center of a complex array. "Your project isn't bringing worlds together," he called out, directing Hi's words toward the monitoring systems he'd identified. "It's destroying them." The dimensional barriers weren't created on a whim, they're necessary protection. "Protection based on fear and ignorance," Director Kagami countered. "The ancient separatists denied humanity access to power that rightfully belongs to both worlds. We are merely reclaiming what was always ours." Raiko growled, electricity intensifying around its form. Through their connection, Naruto sensed the legendary beast's mounting rage at such callous dismissal of cosmic balance. "Enough talk," Tamari decided, her fan now Yuli charged with the wind properties Suicune had bestowed. "We're taking back the crystal." The security forces tensed, weapons powering to maximum charge. The lead operative, a heavily augmented man, with electrical conduits visibly embedded in his skin, raised his hand to signal attack. What happened next occurred with such speed that even the facility's advanced recording systems struggled to document it properly. Raiko moved first, transforming into electrical energy that surged through the security formation, disrupting their neural implants without causing permanent damage to the humans themselves. Simultaneously, Naruto created 4 shadow clones, each targeting different sections of the facility with precise chakra techniques that disabled power systems rather than engaging personnel directly. Samui demonstrated why she was among Kumogakur's elite, her lightning-enhanced blade conducting and redirecting the facility's own electrical defenses against it. Where security system S attempted to overload her position with energy discharges, she channeled the power through her transformed Tonto, using Raiko's blessing to purify and invert the corruption. Leaf coordinated with remarkable efficiency, her Jolteon moving like liquid lightning between opponents, disabling equipment with targeted electrical discharges while her Venusaur created barriers of protective vines around their group's perimeter. Temeri's contribution proved most surprising to their opponents. Her fan, enhanced by Suicune's blessing, generated wind currents that didn't simply move air but purified it of corruption. Where the facility had been saturated with the crystal's inverted energy, her techniques created expanding spheres of clarity that neutralized the ambient corruption. The purification effect is working, Naruto confirmed, his sage senses tracking the changing energy patterns. Focus on creating a clean corridor to the crystal chamber. They moved in coordinated formation, Naruto and Raiko at the vanguard, Temari and Samui maintaining the flanks, while Leaf provided tactical oversight and targeted support. Unlike previous battles that had relied on overwhelming force or complex strategy, this confrontation emphasized precision and purification, neutralizing corruption rather than defeating enemies. The security forces adapted quickly, revealing why Director Kagami had selected them for this sensitive operation. Instead of continuing conventional attacks, they activated secondary systems that released corruption directly into the atmosphere, thick, oily energy that clung to surfaces and disrupted natural chakra flow. This feels like negative chakra, Samui observed, her Tonto's edge slicing through a particularly dense concentration. Similar to what our sensors detected during the Fourth War. It's not just similar, it's directly related, Naruto confirmed, recognizing the distinctive energy signature. They're using Otsutsuki techniques to corrupt natural energy. They fought their way through 3 security checkpoints, each presenting different challenges that required adjusting their approach. Throughout the facility, monitoring systems tracked their progress. The director's voice occasionally offering clinical observations as if they were subjects in an experiment rather than invaders in her facility. Remarkable synergy between dimensional natives, she commented as Temari and Samui combined their enhanced weapons to neutralize a particularly powerful corruption node. The legendary entities have accelerated your compatibility through sympathetic resonance. Most efficient. Her detached analysis only strengthened their resolve. Whatever scientific justification she claimed, the corruption spreading from this facility threatened both worlds with existential harm. They reached the central chamber where the corrupted crystal floated within an elaborate containment system. Up close, the corruption was even more evident, what should have been clear. Multifaceted crystal now pulsed with murky energy, its natural geometric structure distorted into asymmetrical patterns. Careful, Leaf cautioned, her Pokédex scanning the apparatus. They've integrated technology from my world. That's a modified Master Ball containment field interfaced with what appears to be Fuinjutsu. A combination that shouldn't be possible without extensive cross-dimensional research. Samui noted with professional concern. Kumogakur needs to investigate how they acquired such knowledge. Naruto approached the containment field, the crystal at his wrist resonating with its corrupted counterpart. Their connection, though distorted by the corruption, remained fundamentally linked, 2 parts of a system designed to work in harmony. I can purify it, he stated with quiet certainty. But I'll need to interface directly with the corruption. It's not going to be pleasant. You mean it's going to be dangerous, Temari corrected, positioning herself to create a defensive perimeter with her fan. How much support do you need? Before Naruto could answer, Director Kagami's voice returned, now tinged with genuine concern rather than clinical detachment. I wouldn't recommend direct contact, Sage. That crystal has been bathed in dimensional corruption for weeks. Even with your unique abilities, the feedback could be catastrophic. Worried about your test subject? Leaf challenged, the bitterness in her tone revealing her growing anger at being treated as a scientific curiosity. Concerned about dimensional stability, the director corrected. The crystal network responds to significant energy fluctuations across the entire system. A sudden purification could trigger cascading reactions we can't predict. Despite her warning, Naruto recognized the necessity of immediate action. The corruption continued to spread throughout the facility and beyond, weakening dimensional boundaries with each passing moment. "Raiko," he said simply, looking to the legendary beast. The Thunder Tiger understood immediately, moving to position itself opposite Naruto with the corrupted crystal between them. Together, they could create a CIR. Hoot! The animal sage channeling purification while Raiko managed the electrical feedback that would otherwise overwhelm human physiology. "Everyone back," Naruto instructed, his eyes fully transform. Ed into their animal sage configuration, horizontal pupils surrounded by concentric blue rings. "If this goes wrong, it won't," Tamari stated with absolute confidence, though she did step back as requested, creating a protective wind barrier around the operation zone. Samui joined her, adding a lightning perimeter that would contain electrical discharge. Kumo's sensors indicate dimensional T, hinting accelerating across the mountain range. "We don't have the luxury of caution." Leaf positioned her Pokémon strategically, Jolteon to absorb excess electricity, Venusaur to neutralize corruption runoff, and newly released Espeon to monitor psychic disturbances that might indicate dimensional instability. With his support team in position, Naruto reached toward the corrupted crystal, his Han-D passing through the containment field as if it recognized his authority despite the technological modifications. The moment his fingers touched the crystal's surface, corruption surged up his arm like living darkness, seeking to overwhelm his natural energy. Simultaneously, Raiko connected to the crystal from the opposite side, creating the circuit they had planned. Electricity arced between them, blue-white and purifying, creating a visible pathway for the corruption to be channeled and neutralized. Pain exploded through Naruto's consciousness, not merely physical but existential, as if he corruption attacked the very foundation of his being. Images flashed before him. Fragments of other dimensions, creatures neither Pokémon nor summon animals, entities with pale skin and horned protrusions watching from between worlds. Through it all, he maintained his focus on purification, drawing on both Kurama's chakra and his sage abilities to transform corruption into balanced energy. Raiko's contribution proved essential, the legendary beast absorbing and dispersing feedback that would have overwhelmed even Naruto's remarkable stamina. Throughout the facility, alarms blared as systems registered catastrophic changes to their primary power source. Director Kagami's voice returned, now urgent rather than clinical. "The purification is triggering a dimensional resonance cascade. All personnel, execute Emergency Protocol Horizon. Repeat, Emergency Protocol Horizon." Security forces abandoned their positions, evacuating through predetermined routes as the facility began to destabilize. Energy conduits ruptured, releasing raw lightning that Samui struggled to contain within their protective perimeter. "The corruption is fighting back," Leaf observed, her scientific detachment temporarily overwhelmed by concern. "It's almost like it has consciousness." "Because part of it does," Naruto managed through gritted teeth, maintaining his connection despite escalating pain. "There's someone, embedded in the corruption network." The crystal's murky surface began to clear, corruption retreating before the combined purification efforts of Sage and Legendary. As clarity returned to its structure, Naruto perceived a presence withdrawing, an intelligence that had been using the crystal network as both conduit and shelter. With a final surge of purifying energy, the crystal transformed, shedding corruption completely and returning to its original clear, geometric configuration. The abrupt transition released a shockwave of balanced energy that spread throughout the facility, neutralizing remaining corruption and temporarily stabilizing the dimensional boundary throughout the region. Naruto staggered back, supported by Tamari as the connection broke. Raiko appeared equally affected, its electrical form fluctuating briefly before restabilizing. "You did it," Samui stated, surveying the crystal with professional assessment. "The corruption signature has been neutralized." "Not just neutralized," Leaf added, checking readings on her Pokédex. "The crystal's output has actually strengthened. It's reinforcing the dimensional boundary more powerfully than before." Naruto nodded weakly, recovering from the immense energy expenditure. The original function was always there, just inverted. By purifying rather than destroying, we restored its natural purpose. The facility around them continued to destabilize, now lacking the corrupted energy that had maintained its impossible position within the storm system. Lightning struck with increasing frequency. No longer controlled by the technological arrays that had harnessed it. "We need to leave," Tamari announced, already gathering their equipment. This whole structure could collapse at any moment. Samui moved to the crystal, her transformed Tonto resonating with its newly purified energy. "The crystal needs protection until we can return it to the sanctuary." "I can contain it temporarily," Naruto offered, extending his hand toward the floating artifact. To everyone's surprise, the purified crystal moved of its own accord, floating directly to Raiko. The legendary beast accepted it without hesitation, the crystal seemingly absorbing into its body until only a faint glow beneath its fur indicated its presence. Of course, Leaf realized. The legendary beasts are natural guardians of the crystals. Raiko can protect it until proper replacement. A final warning klaxon echoed through the facility as primary support systems failed. The floor beneath them trembled, sections beginning to separate as the structure lost cohesion. "Time to go," Naruto decided, looking to Raiko for confirmation. "Same method as arrival," the legendary beast growled affirmation. CTRI city building around its form once more. Despite the energy expenditure of the purification process, it retained sufficient power for one more lightning transportation. They formed the connection circle as before, Naruto, Tamari, Samui, and Leaf linked physically while Leaf recalled her Pokémon for safety. With practiced coordination now, they surrendered to Raiko's electrical transformation, their physical forms converting to energy that surged through natural lightning pathways back toward the sanctuary on solid ground. Their departure came none too soon. As they vanished in a brilliant flash, the facility began its final collapse, technology and architecture surrendering to the natural laws they had attempted to circumvent, disappearing into the storm from which they had unnaturally emerged. Materialization occurred exactly where they had departed hours earlier, on the plateau before the sanctuary of resonant thunder. Samui's team awaited them, along with reinforcements Fr. Own Kumogakure who had responded to the alert. The physical toll of their ordeal became immediately apparent. Naruto swayed on his feet, the combined strain of purification and electrical transport Ving depleted even his remarkable reserves. Tamari steadied him with practiced ease, her own fatigue evident despite her composed exterior. "Crystal secured?" the Kumo captain inquired, eyeing Raiko. With professional caution rather than fear. Samui nodded sharply. "Purified and under legendary protection. The facility has been neutralized." "And Director Kagami?" another officer asked. "Evacuated before final collapse," Samui reported. "Unknown destination, but likely utilizing dimensional transport based on energy signatures our sensors detected." Naruto focused on regaining his equilibrium, the world still occasionally flickering with electrical afterimages from their unusual mode of transportation. Throughout the ordeal, his connection to the animal sage energy had deepened. What had initially required conscious effort now flowed naturally, his senses automatically processing information across dimensional boundaries. "The crystal needs to be returned to its proper housing," he stated once he could stand unaided. "The sanctuary's original configuration will maximize its stabilizing effect." Raiko growled agreement, padding majestically toward the ancient temple structure. The Kumo forces parted respectfully, recognizing power beyond their understanding yet inherently aligned with their village's elemental affinity. "I'll coordinate with the elders," Samui decided, delegating perimeter security to her second-in-command. "They'll need to perform the proper rituals to reintegrate the crystal into the sanctuary system." As preparations began for the crystal's restoration, Leaf approached Naruto with professional concern, checking his vital signs with practiced efficiency. "Your chakra network shows unusual fluctuation patterns," she observed. "Similar to what I'd expect from Pokémon after intense electrical discharge, but with distinct differences." "I'm fine," he assured her, though the lingering resonance from the corruption still echoed uncomfortably through his system. "Just need rest and natural energy realignment." Tamari joined them, her fan now returned to its normal configuration though the crystalline edges remained as permanent evidence of Suikun's blessing. "That wasn't just corruption you encountered, was it?" she asked with characteristic directness. "You said something about a presence." Naruto nodded grimly. "Something intelligent. NT was using the crystal network, observing, perhaps directing. Not Director Kagami herself, but an entity working through her. Otsutsuki, Tamari suggested, recalling their previous discussions. Similar but different. Naruto struggled to articulate what he'd sensed. Like an Otsutsuki merged with something from Leaf's world. A hybrid consciousness. This revelation prompted immediate concern from both women. Though they expressed it differently, Tamari through tactical assessment of security implications, Leaf through scientific analysis of evolutionary possibilities. Their discussio. N paused as Raiko emerged from the sanctuary, the ritual apparently complete. The legendary beast approached their group with purposeful strides, electricity crackling more intensely around its form. Now that the crystal had been properly restored, through their established connection, Naruto received not just impressions but a clear directive. The time had come to convene the Council of Legends. A gathering that occurred only in moments of cosmic significance. Raiko says we need to meet the council, he translated for the others. A gathering of legendary Pokémon from across dimensional boundaries. The Council of Legends. Leaf repeated, professional excitement overriding exhaustion. That's not just rare, it's mythical. Even in my world, such gatherings are considered more legend than reality. Where does this council convene? Tamari asked pragmatically. Another hidden sanctuary. Between, Naruto replied, the knowledge flowing from Raiko to him. Not in either world but in the dimensional boundary itself, what the ancient texts called the veil between worlds. Samui rejoined them as the sanctuary doors closed, the restoration ritual completed. The elders confirmed the crystal is functioning at optimal capacity again. The dimensional thinning in our region has already begun to stabilize. One down, several more to secure, Naruto confirmed. But first, we've been summoned to meet those who oversee the entire system. The Kumo Kunoichi processed this information with characteristic efficiency. How can Kumogakure assist? By strengthening the sanctuary's defenses and monitoring for any attempt to corrupt it again, he replied. The crystal is secure for now, but our opponents clearly haven't abandoned their overall objective. As they discussed security arrangements, a subtle distortion appeared in the air near their position. Not the jagged, destructive rifts they'd encountered previously, but a smooth, controlled opening between dimensions. Through this portal stepped a figure that caused immediate defensive reactions from the Kumo shinobi. A young woman with vibrant red hair and distinctive glasses materialized on the plateau. Her black cloak bore no village insignia, and specialized equipment attached to her forearms emitted soft pulses of light as they scanned the environment. Uzumaki Karen, Samui identified, her transformed tanto half raised in cautious recognition. Former associate of Sasuke Uchiha and Orochimaru. Karen ignored the Kumo shinobi entirely, her attention fixed on Naruto with an intensity that combined professional assessment with personal recognition. There you are, she stated without preamble. Your chakra signature has been broadcasting across dimensional boundaries for days. Do you have any idea how many sensors that's attracting? Naruto relaxed slightly, recognizing the abrasive greeting as Karen's particular form of concern. Good to see you too, Karen. What brings you to Lightning Country? The same thing that's probably brought every chakra specialist with interdimensional sensing capability, she replied, adjusting her glasses with practiced precision. Unprecedented energy fluctuations, chakra signatures that don't match any known classification, and your distinctive presence at the center of it all. Her gaze shifted to Leaf, specialized sensors immediately identifying the researcher's dimensional incongruity. You're not from this world, she stated factually. Your chakra system shows evolutionary divergence approximately 15,000 years ago, consistent with theories about the ancient separation. Leaf blinked, impressed despite herself. You determined that from a single scan. I'm a sensory type specialized in chakra system analysis, Karen replied with professional pride beneath her brusque demeanor. I've been tracking interdimensional chakra patterns for years. Your arrival created ripples that any decent sensor would notice. Raiko approached the newcomer with evident interest, electricity arcing between its form and Karen's specialized equipment. Rather than backing away, she adjusted several settings on her arm devices, establishing a more stable interaction. Fascinating, she murmured, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her typical defensiveness. Its chakra network incorporates electrical pathways unlike anything in our ecological system. almost as if it evolved specifically to channel interdimensional energy. That's exactly what the legendary beasts are designed to do, Naruto confirmed. They're guardians of the boundaries between worlds. Karen's attention returned to him, her expression shifting from scientific interest to focused concern. Speaking of boundaries, yours are deteriorating at an alarming rate. Your chakra is bleeding across dimensional planes in patterns I've never seen before. What exactly have you gotten yourself into this time, Naruto? The familiar exasperation in her tone brought an unexpected smile to his face. Despite their complicated history, from enemies to reluctant allies to something approaching friendship, Karen's direct approach remained refreshingly consistent. Apparently, I'm the prophesied animal god sage destined to prevent dimensional collapse and protect both worlds from those seeking to force convergence, he summarized with deliberate lightness. Karen stared at him for a long moment before sighing deeply. Of course you are. She adjusted her glasses again, a habitual gesture when processing complex information. Well, that explains why your chakra, a signature, has incorporated elements from both dimensional planes. Your system is literally adapting to serve as a bridge. Her assessment aligned with Naruto's own experience, confirming changes he'd felt but couldn't fully articulate. Before he could respond, however, Raiko growled with increasing urgency, electricity intensifying around its form. What's wrong? Temari asked, recognizing the change in the legendary beast's demeanor. Time constraints, Naruto translated, receiving impressions through their connection. The council gathering is temporally sensitive, they can only maintain the interdimensional space for a limited duration. Then we shouldn't keep them waiting, Leaf suggested, professional excitement barely contained beneath her composed exterior. Karen stepped forward, her equipment recalibrating as she assessed the situation. If you're crossing dimensional boundaries, you'll need stability support. Your chakra network is already under significant strain from whatever transformation you're undergoing. Are you volunteering to come along? Naruto asked, mildly surprised by her implicit offer. Someone with actual scientific training should document this phenomenon, she replied, avoiding direct acknowledgement of her concern for him. Besides, my equipment can monitor dimensional stability in real time. Raiko approached their group, Electricity BU. Ilding is it prepared for another transportation technique, though different from the lightning method used previously. This would be true interdimensional movement rather than physical relocation within a single plane. Samui, Naruto addressed the Kumokunoichi, can we count on Kumogakure to secure this location and monitor for further incursions? She nodded sharply, professional efficiency verting any disappointment at not accompanying them further. The Raikage has authorized full security protocols. We'll coordinate with the other villages regarding the remaining crystal locations. With arrangements confirmed, Naruto turned to their travel group, now consisting of himself, Temari, Leaf, and the newly arrived Karen. The journey between dimensions will be disorienting, he warned, translating Raiko's impressions. Focus on maintaining your sense of self, your core identity and purpose. Like Genjutsu resistance training, Temari noted, already preparing her mental defenses. More fundamental, Karen corrected, her sensory abilities providing deeper insight. Between dimensions, the very concept of individual existence becomes fluid. Without proper anchoring, consciousness can dissipate. Despite this concerning description, they positioned themselves as Raiko indicated, forming a circle with physical contact linking them together. The legendary beast began generating a different form of electricity. Not the blue-white lightning of natural storms but prismatic energy that bent light itself around their group. Remember, Naruto instructed as the transporter. Chion technique built toward critical threshold, no matter what you experience, maintain your connection to purpose. Why you're making this journey matters more than how. Reality fragmented around not violently but in carefully controlled dissolution. Their physical forms remained intact while the world itself separated into constituent energy patterns, revealing the underlying structure of dimensional boundaries. The sensation defied conventional description. They existed simultaneously as physical beings and as patterns of pure consciousness, traveling through a medium that was neither space nor time but the boundary between realities themselves. Through this impossible journey, each experienced the transition differently according to their nature. Naruto perceived interconnect, Ed energy flows linking all living things across dimensional boundaries, his animal sage abilities translating cosmic complexity into comprehensible patterns. Tamari experienced it as wind currents of unimaginable scale and subtlety, carrying information and memory through the fabric of reality itself. Leaf's scientific mind constructed frameworks that allowed her to process the experience, kata, logging phenomena that transcended conventional classification systems. Karen's sensory abilities provided both blessing and curse, allowing her to perceive the dimensional boundaries with unprecedented clarity while overwhelming her with information no human system was designed to process. Throughout the journey, Raiko maintained the integrity of their transition, its evolutionary design perfect. Lee suited to navigating the space between worlds. The legendary beast's consciousness expanded beyond its physical form, revealing depths of awareness that transcended animal intelligence. After what might have been moments or millennia, time itself having limited meaning in the boundary realm, reality recohered around them. They materialized in a space unlike anything in either world, an endless T.W.I. light plane where crystalline structures rose like impossible architecture, their forms shifting subtly when not directly observed. At the plane's center stood a massive tree with luminescent foliage, its roots extending beyond visible reality while its uppermost branches disappeared into a starfield that contained constellations from both their worlds simultaneously. The world tree, Leaf whispered. Scientific detachment temporarily overwhelmed by wonder. It's real. Yggdrasil, Ashvatha, Shinju, many names across civilizations, Karen observed, her equipment recording data at maximum capacity. The mythical connection point between realms. Gathered beneath the world tree were beings of power and presence that commanded immediate recognition, though each manifested differently according to their nature. Entei, Suicune, and Raiko positioned themselves in a triangular formation, their elemental aspects intensified in this boundary realm. Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres perched among the lower branches, their legendary status evident in the perfect balance of their opposing elements. Ho-Oh circled above, its rainbow wings leaving prismatic trails across the twilight sky. Lugia maintained position beneath the surface of a lake that somehow existed within this impossible plane, water and air intermingling at its boundaries. Dialga and Palkia stood at opposite positions, their control over time and space creating stable regions within the inherently unstable boundary realm. And at the gathering's center, standing directly beneath the world tree's main trunk, waited Arceus, the original one. Creator deity of the Pokémon world, its 1,000 arms of judgment manifesting as rays of light that extended throughout the interdimensional space. The Council of Legends, Naruto identified, his animal sage perception allowing him to recognize each entity despite never having encountered most of them before. As they approached, other figures became visible among the legendary gathering, humans and human-like beings who seemed partially transparent, as if their presence here required significant effort to maintain. Previous animal sages, Karen realized, her sensory abilities identifying their distinctive chakra patterns despite their semi-corporeal state. Their consciousness preserved within the boundary realm itself. The gathering's attention focused on Naruto as he approached the central position indicated by Arceus. The original one's presence transcended physical form, its consciousness extending throughout the boundary realm while maintaining a concentrated focus before them. No words were spoken aloud, yet communication flowed with perfect clarity, concepts and knowledge transferring directly between consciousnesses in this place where conventional barriers held limited meaning. The spiral returns to the cycle. Arceus acknowledged Naruto's presence with recognition that spanned millennia. The Guardian awakens as boundaries fail. Naruto responded instinctively, his animal sage abilities translating intention into the pure communication this realm facilitated. I seek understanding to fulfill my role. The crystals are being targeted. The boundaries deliberately weakened. Images formed in the shared consciousness space. The history of both worlds revealed in greater detail than the temple murals had shown. The original unity, the Otsutsuki threat, the difficult decision to separate worlds that had evolved together for eons. The gentle divide was necessary protection, *1 of the spectral sages contributed, his form res. Embling a man from ancient times with markings similar to Naruto's transformed state. Not to isolate but to preserve. Separate development to prevent singular harvest. The concept became clear through A shared understanding rather than explicit explanation. By dividing the original world into two evolutionary paths, the ancient protectors had ensured that no single catastrophe could eliminate both. If the Otsutsuki consumed one world's energy, the other would remain as a reservoir of life and potential. Yet now forces seek convergence, Arceus continued, not for harmony but for efficiency of harvest. The Gathering's collective consciousness revealed the nature of their current threat, an Otsutsuki who had discovered the separate world and recognized its potential as an additional energy source. Rather than conquering each world sequentially, a time-consuming process, they sought to collapse the boundaries and harvest both simultaneously. The hybrid consciousness I sensed in the crystal network, Naruto realized. Connecting his experience to this revelation, Kinshiki Otsutsuki, Arceus confirmed, merged with human scientist through forbidden technique. Neither fully human nor fully celestial, existing in dimensional interstices to direct convergence. This hybrid entity, combining Otsutsuki power with human scientific innovation, had discovered how to corrupt the stabilization crystals, inverting their function from maintaining separation to accelerating convergence. Two crystals corrupted, Suicune contributed, images of affected locations flowing through shared consciousness. 5 remain pure but threatened. We've restored one, Naruto responded, sharing the experience at the Lightning Sanctuary. Temporary success, Dialga's cosmic consciousness interjected, its perception extending through timestreams beyond normal understanding. The convergence acceleration continues through other vectors. The time deity's awareness revealed disturbing truth. While the crystal network formed the primary stabilization system, Kinshiki's hybrid consciousness had identified additional methods to weaken dimensional boundaries. Even with all crystals restored, convergence would continue unless these alternative approaches were neutralized. The ancient artifacts, one of the spectral sages explained, his consciousness pattern identifying him as the last full manifested animal sage from 1,000 years prior. 3 keys that together can override the crystal network, for restoration or destruction. Images formed in their shared awareness. 3 objects of power created by the original animal sages as emergency measures should the crystal network ever fail. The crown of beasts, a circlet forged from materials from both worlds, allowing direct unication with all animal species across dimensional boundaries. The harmonic prism, a crystalline device that could synchronize dimensional frequencies, either reinforcing or dissolving the boundaries between worlds. The sage's mantle, a garment woven from the world tree's leaves, granting its wearer protection while physically crossing dimensional boundaries. Together, these 3 artifacts implement a complete restoration of the gentle divide, reinforcing boundaries while maintaining the necessary connections that prevented either world from becoming completely isolated. The artifacts were hidden, the spectral sage continued, separated to prevent misuse. 1 in each world, and 1 in the boundary between. Kinshiki seeks these as well, Arceus confirmed. The crystal corrupt ion provides time while his agents search for the ultimate tools of convergence. Understanding the full scope of their challenge, Naruto turned to his companions, who had experienced the shared consciousness exchange differently according to their individual perceptions. Tamari had followed the strategic implications with sharp clarity, her mind already formulating multi-layered approaches to curing both the remaining crystals and locating the artifacts. Leaf absorbed the scientific revelations with professional fascination, connections forming between Pokémon evolutionary history and interdimensional narrative being revealed. Karen's sensory abilities had allowed her to perceive the communication with exceptional detail, her equipment recording energy patterns that would provide valuable analysis when they returned. I understand the threat, Naruto acknowledged to the council. But restoring crystals and finding artifacts will take time we may not have if convergence continues accelerating. Arceus's consciousness expanded, encompassing the entire gathering in shared purpose. Time for final awakening. The animal sage must transcend limitation. The legendary Pokémon moved in perfect coordination, positioning themselves in a complex geometric pattern around Naruto. The spectral sages added their consciousness to the formation, creating layers of resonance that UILT toward a purpose understood by all present. The mark of the sage, Arceus explained, not merely symbol but function. The complete connection that allows true guardianship. Naruto understood what was being offered, and the responsibility it entailed. Unlike his previous power awakenings that had come through crisis or necessity, this required conscious acceptance of a role beyond individual identity. This is why you were chosen, Leaf realized aloud, scientific understanding merging with deeper recognition. Your entire life prepared you for this, connecting with Kurama, mastering sage mode. Even your natural ability to form bonds across boundaries. Your chakra system is uniquely adapted, Karen added, her sensors confirming what the legends already knew. Multiple chakra types harmonized within a single network. Something that should be theoretically impossible. Tamari said nothing, but her steady presence conveyed complete confidence in his capacity to bear whatever burden this awakening would bring. With calm certainty born from a lifetime of facing seemingly impossible challenges, Naruto stepped into the position indicated at the pattern's center. I accept the responsibility, he stated simply, addressing the council directly, not for power, but for protection. The ceremony that followed transcended conventional description. Energy flowed from the legendary Pokémon into the geometric pattern, channeled through the consciousness of previous sages before converging on Naruto. The world tree itself contributed, roots pulsing with primordial energy that predated the separation of worlds. Unlike the painful, forced awakenings many shinobi experienced when accessing new power levels, this transformation progressed with harmonious purpose, each stage buoy. LDING naturally upon foundations already established through Naruto's unique life path. The mark of the sage manifested physically, intricate patterns extending from his eyes in luminescent lines that mapped interdimensional energy flows across his skin. These weren't merely decorative but functional, creating channels through which he could directly perceive and influence the boundaries between worlds. More significantly, his consciousness expanded beyond individual limitation while paradoxically becoming more distinctly himself. The apparent contradiction resolved through experience rather than explanation, like a musical instrument finding its true resonance and purpose. When the transformation completed, Naruto stood transformed yet fundamentally unchanged, his core identity intact but now connected to a cosmic role that transcended personal ambition. The animal god sage awakens, Arceus acknowledged, the title now realized rather than merely prophesied. Guardian of the gentle divide, protector of twin evolution. Bridge between realms. The gathered legendaries responded with their respective calls, roars, cries, and songs that harmonized into acknowledgement and acceptance of the newly awakened guardian. With the ceremony complete, the council shifted focus to immediate strategy. Through their shared consciousness, they established priorities with efficient clarity. Remaining pure crystals required protection and reinforcement. Teams would be dispatched to each location, combining forces from both worlds where possible. The three ancient artifacts needed to be located before Kinshiki's agents could claim them, their positions partially obscured even from legendary perception due to protective measures. Most urgently, the accelerating convergence required mediate countermeasures to slow its progress while more permanent solutions were implemented. The first artifact lies in your world, Dialga revealed, its temporal perception identifying probable locations. The crown of beasts, hidden within the land of water where boundaries between animal and human blur. The second exists in the Pokémon world, Palkia contributed, spatial awareness extending across dimensional boundaries. The harmonic prism, concealed within ancient ruins that your companion may recognize. Leaf nodded in understanding, already connecting this information with archaeological sites she'd studied in her professional work. The third and most powerful, the Sage's Mantle, resides neither in one world nor the other, Arceus concluded, but in the garden between worlds. A pocket dimension accessible only to those with specific mental harmonics. With objectives established and information shared, the Council of Legends began to conclude its rare gathering. The Nadari realm itself showed signs of temporal limitation, the edges of reality beginning to waver as the interdimensional space reached its sustainable duration. Return now to your world, Arceus instructed. The knowledge imparted will guide your path. The legendary beasts remain your direct conduits to this council. Asterisk. As the gathering prepared to disperse, Naruto experienced one final communicati. On. This one directed specifically to him rather than shared with the entire assembly. The burden of the sage's balance, asterisk the spectral form of the last animal god sage imparted privately. Not merely between worlds but within yourself. The connections you form with others will anchor your humanity as your cosmic awareness expands. Asterisk. With this final wisdom transferred, the boundary realm began its controlled dissolution. Unlike their journey to this place, return transportation occurred with sudden transition, reality reconstructing around them as they materialized exactly where they had departed from the lightning sanctuary. Samui and her team remained in position, though their expressions suggested significant time had passed during what had seemed a relatively brief council meeting. You've been gone 3 days. The Kumo Kunoichi informed them, professional composure masking evident relief at their return. We were beginning to consider retrieval options. 3 days, Leaf repeated, checking her Pokédex's chronometer with scientific concern. The temporal dilation was more significant than expected. Karen was already reviewing data from her equipment, analysis confirming the time discrepancy. The boundary realm exists partially outside conventional time flow. What felt like hours to us translated differently in baseline reality. Naruto absorbed this information with calm acceptance, his newly expanded awareness already adjusting to the concept of relative temporal experience. The mark of the sage remained visible on his skin, subtle in normal light but luminescent when he channeled chakra. The patterns extending from his eyes along his cheekbones and down his neck in intricate designs that resembled both natural energy flows and ancient script. We have our next objectives, he announced to the assembled group, the natural authority in his voice enhanced rather than imposed by his transformation. And we're racing against accelerating convergence. Mari had already shifted to strategic planning, her military training seamlessly incorporating the new information. We need to split our efforts. Some to protect remaining crystals, others to locate the artifacts. I should return to my world, Leaf suggested, though her expression revealed reluctance beneath professional duty. The harmonic prism can only be located by someone familiar with the archaeological sites there. Impossible currently, Karen interjected, reviewing her sensor data. The dimensional barriers are still too unstable for controlled crossing. Any attempt would likely result in random displacement rather than targeted arrival. This assessment created immediate tactical complications. Their objectives required presence in both worlds, yet safe passage between them remained temporarily impossible. Then we focus on this world's priorities first, Naruto decided, his expanded perception allowing him to visualize competing priorities simultaneously. The crown of beasts in water country and protecting the remaining pure crystals. We should also establish a central coordination point, Tamari suggested. The information we've gathered needs to be shared with the 5 cage and appropriate specialists. Samui nodded in agreement. Kumogakure offers its resources for this effort. The Raikage has already contacted the other hidden villages regarding the dimensional threat. As they discussed logistics, Naruto noticed Karen standing slightly apart, her attention focused on her equipment while occasionally glancing toward him with analytical assessment. Her sensory abilities allowed her to perceive his transformation more comprehensively than the others, including aspects that remained invisible to conventional perception. Your chakra network has completely reconfigured, she noted when he approached. It's still recognizably you, but with fundamental alterations that should be theoretically impossible without years of gradual adaptation. Is that concern I hear? He asked with gentle humor, recognizing her scientific observations as her particular way of expressing care. She adjusted her glasses, a habitual gesture that provided momentary shield for her expression. Merely professional interest. Rapid physiological changes typically indicate instability. I'm stable, he assured her. Different, but still me. Her sensors continued their analysis, confirming his statement despite her apparent skepticism. Your core chakra signature maintains consistent harmonics despite the overlay of animal sage energy. That's actually remarkable. This qualified acknowledgement represented significant praise from Karen, whose scientific standards typically demanded extensive verification before accepting unusual phenomena. Your sensory abilities will be crucial for what's ahead, Naruto noted, recognizing her unique contribution to their team. You can detect dimensional thinning more accurately than conventional instruments. That's why I followed your energy signature here, she admitted, professional pride momentarily overriding her typically guarded demeanor. My research into chakra system evolution led me to theorize about interdimensional resonance patterns. Your transformation is providing unprecedented confirmation. As they rejoined the larger group, Leaf approached with professional curiosity tempered by genuine concern. How are you adapting to the physiological changes? She asked, her researcher's instincts balanced by personal connection that had developed through their shared experiences. It's like seeing in new spectrums. Naruto explained, finding words for experiences that transcended conventional description. Connections and patterns that were always present but previously invisible. Your vitals show remarkable stability despite the transformation, she observed, Pokédex sensors providing medical readings beyond conventional ninja diagnostic techniques. In my world, evolution typically creates temporary vulnerability before new strength manifests. You seem to have bypassed that phase. Advantage of gradual preparation versus sudden change, he suggested. Everything in my life somehow led to this. Even parts that seemed unrelated at the time. This perspective resonated with Leaf, whose own journey from Pallet Town researcher to interdimensional traveler contained similar patterns of apparently random events revealing greater purpose in retrospect. Their conversation paused as Tamari approached, having completed coordination arrangements with Samui and Kumo leadership. Transportation to Water Country is being arranged, she reported with efficient precision. Kumogakure is dispatching teams to monitor the remaining crystal locations while we pursue the crown artifact. They're being remarkably cooperative, Karen noted with slight suspicion, her experiences with hidden village politics having fostered healthy skepticism toward institutional altruism. Dimensional collapse threatens everyone equally, Tamari pointed out practically. Even traditional rivalries become irrelevant when facing existential risk. Naruto nodded in agreement, his expanded perspective encompassing both immediate tactical concerns and broader implications. We leave for Water Country immediately. Karen, your sensory abilities will be essential for locating the crown artifact. Tamari, your strategic experience and Suikun's blessing will help navigate Water Country's political complexities. And me? Leaf asked, adjusting her equipment with practiced efficient. Why, despite evident fatigue from their interdimensional journey? Your knowledge of legendary Pokémon and their connections to natural elements provides context none of us possess, Naruto replied, recognizing her unique contribution despite her concerns about being displaced from her native world. The Crown of Beasts interfaces with creatures from both dimensions, your expertise will be crucial for identifying and utilizing it properly. Quote, this acknowledgement visibly reassured Leaf, addressing unspoken concerns about her role in a world where her scientific specialization had limited conventional application. As preparations for departure continued, Raiko approached Naruto one final time. The legendary beast had remained mostly silent since their return, conserving energy after the signif. I can't expenditure of interdimensional transportation. Through their established connection, Raiko conveyed its intention to remain in Lightning Country, guarding the restored crystal while continuing to monitor dimensional stability in the region. Entei and Suikun had undertaken similar responsibilities in their respective territories, creating a network of legendary protection around the crystal system. We'll see each other again when the council reconvenes, Naruto acknowledged, placing his hand respectfully on the Thunder Tiger's head in farewell. With a final rumbling growl that carried both warning and encouragement, Raiko departed, bounding across the plateau before transforming into electrical energy that merged with the mountain's natural lightning in spectacular display. As they prepared for their journey to Water Country, Naruto found a moment of quiet contemplation, processing the profound transformation he had undergone. The mark of the sage wasn't merely physical Chi represented fundamental change to his relationship with both worlds, responsibility that extended beyond personal connection to cosmic guardianship. Yet within this expanded awareness, his core identity remained uncompromised, the bonds he had formed throughout his life serving as anchors to his humanity despite transcendent awakening. The spectral sage's final advice resonated with wisdom Naruto had always instinctively understood. True strength came not from isolation but from connection, not from power but from purpose. The journey ahead would test this balance between cosmic responsibility and human connection, challenges requiring both the animal god sage's transcendent abilities and Naruto Uzumaki's unyielding determination and compassion. As they departed the lightning sanctuary, the mark upon his skin pulsed with subtle luminescence, a visible reminder of both protection and purpose, the mandate to preserve not just worlds in their separation but the essential connection between them that constituted the true gentle divide. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.